Good afternoon, everybody. Can I have your attention, please? We're about to start the meeting. Welcome, everybody. My name's Amanda Carter and I represent Carvely and Farsley. I'm one of the councillors for that ward. Today we are being live streamed on YouTube, which you'll be able to watch later. I think we've had up to 400 viewers, which is really exciting. So keep viewing, everybody. Can I ask everybody to introduce themselves, please? I'll start on my left.
Stuart Byrne from the Safer Stronger Communities team.
Mike Stevenson, Localities Officer for the Outer West Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Peter Carlill from Carvely and Farsley ward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Anne Forsyth from Farnley and Wortley ward.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Abigail Masenga, Engagement Support Officer, quite new to the Communities team.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Howling. I'm the Support Officer for the Outer West Community Committee. I work with Mike.
Councillor Trish Smith, Pudgy ward.
Councillor oh, sorry.
He's in there straight away. Councillor Anne Blackburn, Councillor for Farnley and Wortley ward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Andrew Carter, Carvely and Farsley ward.
Good afternoon, Debbie Oldham, and I'm the clerk to the committee.
Councillor David Blackburn, Farnley and Wortley ward.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to the clerk for items 1 to 5.
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item number 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Under item 2, there are no items which require the exclusion of the press or the public. Under item 3, there are no late items of business. Item 4, could I ask members to declare any interests? And I take silence as there are none. Under agenda item 5, we have received apologies from Councillor Dawn Seray. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I understand that Councillor Simon Seary is going to try to make the meeting later on. Okay, so we're on to item agenda 6. Do we have anybody wishing to speak today, Debbie?
No, Chair. Unfortunately, we don't.
Thank you. So we'll go on to the minutes now. And I'm very pleased to see in the minutes that even though it's 5 months later, the BD postcodes issue is now going to go to Executive Board. It's a really important issue for lots of people in our ward who have got a BD postcode. Simple and issues that could be easily sorted out if they had a Leeds postcode, like their doctor and the emergency services going to the wrong addresses or saying, oh, it's not part, we're taking to Bradford, not Leeds. So there are lots of really important issues that could be sorted out very easily by just changing it to an LS postcode. And as we've discussed before, it shouldn't be an operational issue for the post office. They could call it anything they liked, really, and distribute in any way they like. It's just really important for our residents who have got a BD postcode that they can, because they live in Leeds, can then have a Leeds postcode. So has anybody got any more comments on the minutes? Can we take those as read? Thank you very much. So now on to the next item, which is item 8, Parks and Countryside. And I welcome Guy Smithson, and might like a little bit of a report about those naughty horses and riders who've been on our Carvely Park and on our tennis courts.
Hi you all. It's first time I've been, so I'll do my best to help out. I've emailed you back about the horses. So we've got we're going to drop a ton of top dressing off for the club to tend to. The gates are all locked, so I think it's a matter of trying to catch who it is on the horses, really, isn't it? So we'll keep an eye on that and see what progress it is. My understanding is I've come to explain where we are with the bedding, if I'm right in that. And as you all know, that if you look on item 7 of your packs, Phil Stan highlighted the report what went to the members board forum. And basically we have now worked through, and all roundabouts now have been converted into just grass areas. And later on in end of April, beginning of May, they will receive a wildflower seed mix through them. In community parks, we've reduced the bedding by 50%. I've actually met with Councillor Carter on some issues in Carvey Park, which I think we've resolved. I've met Councillor Smith at Putsey Park and went through what we're changing and how we're going to do it. And I'm speaking to Councillor Blackburn today about what we've done at Farnley Hall. We've grassed one bed over. We still have bedding at one of the entrances and bedding in front of the park. But where we've done away with the circle bed, that will receive all beds. What we have done away with will receive a wildflower mix through the beds what were there. Cemeteries have not changed whatsoever. They're staying the same. And obviously, there's a small grass verges, highway verges where you have an island. They've been reduced as well, which will receive wildflower mix. And that's really it. I'm happy to take any questions on what we've done, or if any members would like to go out, I'm quite happy to go out with any members and walk around about the changes that we have made.
Councillor Andrew Carter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We also met in connection with Westroyd Park in Farsley, Guy, if you remember. And there we had quite a mixed response from local residents. A number wanting, I think, all the flower beds restored to what they were like before. But to be fair, other people saying they were quite happy with some wildflower ones. So we came to a very sensible agreement, I think. And we know that one or two are going to be wildflowers, and one or two are going to be the usual traditional bedding. There was one other issue there. There's the Garden of Remembrance as you first go into the bottom entrance of the park, and there were some rose trees. I take it they're staying because they were bought. They weren't bought by the Parks Department. They were bought by voluntary donations when I was Deputy Lord Mayor, and I gather they are staying.
Yeah, everything's staying, and what we agreed on site of the mixture, that is what we will be carrying out.
And the other point I wanted to make, Chair, was just to thank Guy for speedily reacting to the issue we had with travellers' horses, which were led into the park, not with the caravans. They parked on some fields near the park, but they were led on to the park, and of course led across the grass, which is extremely wet and boggy, and onto the outfield, and hoof prints have been left. So the fact that we're getting the sort of topsoil is extremely helpful, and we can get that sorted out. And if those hoof prints have been left in drier weather, they would undoubtedly be I think a safety hazard for cricketers in the outfield running across and tripping into what's been left. So, and as I've seen Mr. Staniforth has just walked in, I'd like to.
Can I just offer my sincere apologies? I got totally lost. It's like I've never been to the Civic Hall.
Phil, really Phil, have no fear. I recognise you as soon as you walked in. So I'd like to thank you for all your service to the city over many years, and not least to Carvey and Farsley.
They're all coming to pub.
You're around.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you, Guy, for your report. My question, quite simply, really is, so this is for this year. So where does the maintenance or otherwise go for some subsequent years? What are the plans? What are the cost implications, and what would you, what's the maintenance and management going to be?
Well, part of the cost savings is some of what was one of the reasons why we've gone away from bedding to wildflower. Not only that, we wanted to encourage more natural pollinators, and I think the maintenance on roundabouts will be less than what we've seen before, and it will allow us to focus more on our resources within the park. The beds will stay the same, so each year they'll be refurbished with bedding, and the wildflower meadows will be refurbished with, I think it's a 30% reseed each year, so to keep it going. So that's where we are with that.
No, I think that was my question really. How much maintenance is there going forward? And I mean, it's going to be presumably looking different each year because there will be sort of a succession and things as well, flowers and things. Yeah, it'll need cutting presumably. And then
yeah, there will be. Yeah, I mean, the wildflower meadow mix will stay in till September, and then it'll be cut down and collected and dot weeded for any perennial weeds, and then later on April time it'll have a 30% reseed on that. And obviously there's litter picking to be done on the roundabout. But I mean, from a good part of climate change, it's less manicured grass cutting and more friendly to bees, pollinators. And obviously the formal bedding in the parks, that gets changed every year. So one year you could have geraniums there, and then we could go to African marigolds and that. So that will be consistent now. There's no predictive changes on that.
Just in case there's any doubt, I'm really pleased that this is being done.
Okay, you're welcome.
Councillor Anne Blackburn, then Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, you mentioned roundabouts. Now, the question is, previously we have had some roundabouts that have been sponsored, and so presumably the sponsor wants some nice flowers, not wildflowers there, I'm assuming. I know that not all of them are sponsored, but if people still want to sponsor them, presumably we'll be still allowing that, and presumably those sponsors will be able to say, well, basically what they want there to a certain extent. Because, and I'm assuming that it's the others that you're going to plant out with wildflowers, because it would be silly if the council said, no, we don't want your money. Just because you want some pansies there. No, we're not having your money. No, it's got to be wildflowers. From a council point of view, I think that would be silly. But as I said, I appreciate that not all of them are. Now, if I can just give you my two things and then you can reply. The other thing is, as you know, Guy, I have this thing about the rose garden in Western Flats, and I understand now that there will still be some roses there, and there'll be some mix there, because I think that that's important. And I was saying that to the Levelling Up people the other day, because a lot of old people, well, it doesn't have to be old people, the people I'm sure go in there as well, but it's the older people that's commented to me. They usually comment when they say the roses are looking nice and all this, but I have had sort of middle-aged people mention the same. And it's somewhere I think we should have, it's always been a rose garden, so I'm keen that we keep the roses there. Obviously, what I haven't said before, but I'll say it now, if there's a problem that we need some replacing because they've come to the end of the life or the deceased, well, let me know and I'll pay for some nice funding for that. Obviously, as you know, I'm keen that we keep some roses in there, and I don't think there should be a problem with that, really. And if there was, I don't agree with it, and I would argue that it's the only park that we've got roses in. So it's important, and it's known as the Rose Garden. And we do have our band concerts there as well. So, you know, I'll just throw that in again and let you know that I haven't had anybody who I've spoke to disagree with me on that one. I'll leave it there for now.
The response to your roundabouts is that we are keeping sponsorship on it. There will be a redesigned sign, which wasn't a picture of it in the report, what was sent to board members, which points out that we're going pollinator friendly city to encourage it. And to my understanding, I haven't heard that we've lost any sponsorship between the change, because the sponsorship is about advertising your sign on the roundabout. It's not actually what sits on the roundabout. It's actually, they pay for the space, the prime space, not actually what sits on the roundabout. So there's quite a few roundabouts what have not had any bedding in for many years, but we still get quite a good sponsorship. A little bit about the levelling up. I've been working closely with one of Phil's officers called Phil G. Phillips, and we've been working with groundwork.
Yes.
And we've spent quite a considerable amount of time looking at Western Flats, and they are going to bring a plan together. And if we want to incorporate roses in that plan, then we can. But what I would say is, once they've done all their writing up and drawing their fancy maps with flowers and different types of muggers and playgrounds, then members will have the first option to discuss that and say, well, I would prefer this or that. So once that's done, I'll make sure that Councillor Blackburn and yourself receives a copy of what the intentions are if we're successful under the levelling up bid. Okay.
Yes, we've already had some discussions, but I'm sure they will be sending us something in writing. But we've had discussions with them and give our views the other day. And as I said, I mentioned about the roses and that, and I'll mention it again, and I'll keep on mentioning it until, you know, the penny drops or whatever, because it's important. Once we lose that, it will be a detriment. And I've got nothing against them planting wildflowers in the rest of the park or whatever, and the other parks, but that's the only one that we've ever had a rose garden in. And as I said, it's really popular, so I'm keen to keep it. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Forsyth, is yours on the same subject?
It is on the same subject, very, very quickly. And I know that you're including the newly formed Friends of Western Flats Park in the consultations, but I'm partly saying this so that others here know that there's a newly formed group there who are very keen on the Rose Garden as well. Just mentioning it.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, then David Blackburn, then Andrew Carter.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Guy, thanks to you and your team. I know you've worked extremely hard on this, and I know that you've sort of come to some fairly difficult decisions at times. I have to say, Tysell Park in particular is looking absolutely amazing. So the blooming Tysell group are very pleased with that. So thank you for that. I just wondered if there was any scope for underplanting on some of the roundabouts with bulbs. Obviously, bulbs look after themselves. And with the wildflower mixes often having short-lived life, you know, the roundabouts could look quite bare for a period of time, and I just wondered if lifting them in spring bulbs might give them a little bit of extra colour. And also, I'd like to see more fruiting trees underplanted with edible berry type bushes, if possible. In all of the parks. I think they offer good value for money in terms of they are a tree, they're another habitat, they offer fruit to passers-by, and if the fruit isn't picked, then they're obviously food then over the winter for the various bird species that stay with us. So I'd like to see something along those lines if possible, please. Thank you.
I don't see the reason why we couldn't underplant with bulbs. I do agree with you that the season of wildflowers season is difficult. However, we're in talks with Rigby Taylor, who's the Spire of Seed, trying to get a more consistent flowering through each month. So you might get different variations blooming at different times to prolong a thing. Obviously, in the financial report, bulbs are not highlighted in that, and that would be probably something what you would have to fund yourselves, which I'm quite happy to talk about numbers and that. I'm just working on some with the Wheatwood members. I'm never against putting in additional fruit in bushes like gooseberries and currants and that. Again, unfortunately, there's a cost, and that would have to be found from somewhere else because parks do not have the budget to be able to complete that.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your comments about the team work. It's appreciated.
Councillor David Blackburn, then Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. Going back to wildflowers, something I think we've championed in our world over years. In fact, many years ago, my former colleague, Councillor Claire Nash, actually paid for some wildflowering on the junction of Pudsey Road and Tongue Road near the lake there, which now is a sea of nettles. The thing is, if you don't keep up to them, and the ground, because it's got to be of a lower grade as the soil. Well, as you well know, you did it. But the point is, what concerns me is not that what we're doing, because I actually think it's a good idea, and I actually think, you know, letting things grow a bit wilder, if you like, is the best way, because that gets biodiversity, and it gets bees, it gets birds, it gets everything. It's great. But what we've got to do is make sure that it stops like that and not turn into a sea of nettles or thistles. And I'm sorry to say, I've seen this happen before, where we funded things and a few years later, the maintenance has been taken off, which is not high maintenance, I admit, but the fact that's what concerns me. I also think that there are areas where we could possibly let it go a bit, you know, wild on its own, if you like. And I'm talking about Western Flats and not wishing to sort of prejudge our new group there. But one thing that the previous Friends group were keen on was in the boggy bit back at Westerns, where we have real trouble, putting something in there that suits sort of boggy ground to actually soak up some water. So as I say, I think that's the right thing. But I just said it concerns me that our past record on maintaining wildflower areas hasn't been good.
Just to answer that, Councillor Blackburn, many moons ago when we did put that wildflower meadow in, there was never any ongoing funds to go back to it. What we're doing with the roundabouts and places is, like I said, we're going to look at a regeneration of 30% of that wildflower meadow. Part of that maintenance, that meadow, that we will spray perennial weeds out, such likes of dock leaves and thistles, which should allow us to maintain and keep it to a correct level how it should be. Again, going back to Western Flats, under the Levelling Up project, what I've been working on, we've highlighted some really nice areas for wilding and wildflower meadows, and some additional standard tree planting, not just whips, which I think will definitely, what I've seen on paper, I think will benefit Western Flats very highly. Okay.
Councillor Andrew Carter.
Yeah, just to touch on this, the wildflower planting, which I agree with David. I thought some of it looked quite spectacular this last year. But there is an issue if you get nettles. Nettles have a deep root, And if nettles start to take, and I know this from bitter experience, you can pull them, put your gloves on, pull them up. And if you leave the root there, the following year, they'll be back again with a vengeance. And we don't want it to be a good, oh, that was a good idea at the time, wasn't it? But we didn't think about that. So I think a lot depends on the quality of seed and the seed, the wildflower seed that you source. And you need to keep a close eye on that. The two things I wanted to mention was first of all, Farsley Rec, where we've got new equipment and repairs carried out. So thank you very much for that. That was much needed. But the major point was Hainsworth Park. Now, we've just had a communication from the Friends of Hainsworth Park, who did a good job in raising the money. But it was done by crowdfunding. And now I'm getting a bit tired of people saying to me, where's this money gone? So it's not doing anybody any good. And now we're told it's going to be March/April. Well, the way things are going at the moment, I reckon that means April/May. But anyway, we'll see. It's a good scheme. Where the ward councils have supported it heavily financially now to actually do both phases. And we want to see it on the ground. But it isn't the parks and countryside who are doing the work, as you know. I want an assurance that the company that does the work, and it's related to Green Leeds, isn't it, or whatever it's called now. Yeah, and that we keep a proper eye and get a good job done, because individuals have put, you know, a few quid in here, a few quid in there, and without that, it wouldn't have happened. But frankly, people are scratching their heads. And it's nobody's fault, and I'm not blaming anybody, but it is an issue. At the weekend, I was collared by a couple of people who asked, what the heck's going on? And it's certainly not the parks and countryside's fault. So I would like to make sure we keep a very close eye on that when the work's going on, because I don't want us to have a load of disappointed people, and particularly kids.
I think you're right, Guy. Could I just respond to that, Councillor Carter? Sorry, what we do and what the plans are, and so on and so forth. So you make a really good point, Councillor Carter, and I do appreciate that, and I can assure you that that's been impressed upon, particularly Thuja, who's the area officer for that. So she is conscious of that, Councillor Carter. Okay. Lovely.
The ward members have topped up the funding substantially, and of course, don't forget, the first 20 grand of it came from the government.
Just say something. I know that it's been dragged out quite a bit of time, and I think more from the group who applied for the first money, as you know, Councillor Carr. But the good news is, I know for a fact, I know Phil won't know this, but Thuja Phillips has met the groundwork this week, and they're setting up a start date. So as soon as I get back, I'll speak to Thuja and ask her to update you on what we discussed at that meeting, and emphasise the importance of it as well. Yeah, definitely.
Answering questions we can't answer.
Okay, and just a little bit of a touch on Farsley War Memorial.
Oh yeah.
I have been successful at last getting a company to provide us the right quantity of stone, and they've placed the order. So once it arrives, we'll work out a delivery date, and I'll let you know straight away.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Carmel.
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly on that last point. Yeah, it's been around those plans for Hainsworth, and they've been around several times around ward members. I think what ward members were all agreed on, that we're very happy with the designs that are out, and we just need as much support from the Parks and Countryside team to make sure what's delivered is as per those plans and is well delivered, because obviously there's community funds, there's government money, there's ward councillors money, and there'll be Parks and Countryside's time and an effort in maintaining it after that. So for all of those sakes, we'd like that. I was going to touch on the wildflowers briefly as well, because I'm a real fan of the wildflower displays in some of the locations. They're really excellent, and throughout the year you obviously give quite a varied display of things, and that's been commented on by a number of people. It's really good to hear you talking around the seed mix and trying to prolong that, because I think one of the concerns is it's those winter months when you really want a bit of brightness in the park. That's something that fixed bedding can give you, but unfortunately the wildflowers obviously have a set season. So as long as we can prolong that, I think that's really possible, because there are some that have been somewhat bare in the wintertime. And while the wildflowers are amazing for biodiversity, for the environment, and I personally love the look of them, it's that winter time as well. One other point I was going to raise, just related to the conversations you had about Western Flats, that we've obviously had the problem with Westroyd Park of the boggy areas for some time. And I met the charge hand down there and was discussing what we could do with that area, because at the moment that area is absolutely unusable. And as a dog owner, if your dog runs across it, then you're left with a dirty house for weeks after the fact that they've been through a puddle. There's an area there that actually, whether that could be looked at, whether some longer grass or similar in some of those areas that are completely unusable would create, one, a barrier from people accidentally getting their wellies soaked, and two, quite a nice visual display, but as well it might help the rest of the park go, because that's a problem that's been on for some time, and obviously it fits in the line we're going. But yeah, I think it's a really positive move we're moving towards around a really varied looking different areas of the park that give some really good interest, but it's just those couple of issues.
The gentleman you met was Kev Wood, who is he's area officer, he's on development at the moment. I'm hoping that he develops and takes a position for Putsey, because my personal view of Kevin's dealing with members and what he's doing is excellent. And he's mentioned Westroyd to me, and I've asked him to investigate it, because I think Councillor Carter remember this, because me and Councillor Carter's been around a lot of years. It does have several drains what runs off the properties from the back. Every now and again they collapse and they get blocked, and then we start getting the bogginess down there. So I've asked Kevin to organise a camera to go down and investigate all them first, because if it's a matter of fixing a drain, then that's what we need to do. And then at the far bottom end, for quite a few years, it's not been looked after very well. Kevin's come in and really pushing hard with the limited resources we've got. And I know Kevin has actually managed to tidy up all the bottom end. So if we keep an eye on that and we fix the leak, then that could be possibly where we look at doing something different in discussions with yourself and Councillor Carter. That's okay.
Need to remember one thing, Guy. It has always been a bog, and Phil will remember some years ago we went down there when it was at its worst, and you spent quite a lot of money on drainage which didn't do the job. And as you say, I've been around quite a long time, and I played football. It was a football pitch actually. In the football season, half the season it was totally unplayable. And talk about dogs going home covered in mud. There were no changing rooms. People went home covered in mud, which didn't over-impress your parents. And eventually, the council, and I think it was actually Pudsey Borough Council, took the goalpost out, so this isn't worth a candle. So all I would say is, if we could do anything to reduce the bogginess, that would be better, because you can use more of the park. But I suspect you will find there are some major drainage issues, because it's been a bog since long before the fields that were around it were built on. It's a nightmare. But if we can do something, all the better.
I'll take a look at that in a bit more detail.
Thank you. Are there any more comments on that? Thank you. I'd just like to extend my following Councillor Andrew Carter's remarks to Phil Sunnyforth. Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you very much for all the hard work that you've done.
I'm really touched, and I do appreciate it. And I have to say, it's been a pleasure. And what I wanted to say when I came in, unfortunately I was late, was it's great to see you all. You know, I've got absolutely fed up of watching videos of everybody, and it's nice that we can actually meet in person. But thanks an awful lot for your wishes. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's nice to see you as well. In fact, it's nice to see everybody again, isn't it? So we'll move on to the next item, which is item 9, antisocial behaviour. I asked for this item to be put on the agenda because throughout lockdown, antisocial behaviour has increased, but there's a particular issue of quad bikes and off-road bikes, which has gone completely out of proportion. I don't know about you, but we found some pretty intimidating characters wearing black balaclavas and threatening residents. So I wanted to bring this for discussion among members.
Comes about, I suppose, because, and I'm sure you've all been doing the same, we've had 2 or 3 meetings now, the last one with a whole variety of departments of the council, the police, you name it. There are 3 particular issues, but by no means is that just the problem, because you get them tearing up and down Farsley Town Street. There's no way of recognizing them or catching them on camera because you don't know who they are and there's no number plates on. And the biggest joke of all is particularly when it comes to parks and countryside, and again, not your fault. But what were we told? The team, we've had a team of 4, one's off with whatever, and they come from East Leeds, by which time the quad bikers are not only gone, but probably gone out of the county and leaving a trail of devastation behind them. And well, I was going to mention this later on, but I want to use my colleagues to agree to using some of our remaining capital, because we've identified 2 places with parks and with Bob Buckingham, where if we install one small and one large quad bike stopper, which has to be a double row of barriers, otherwise they get over it. And we need one installing on the unmade Woodhall Road, where they've been coming up from Bradford, but also now coming from wherever locally, getting onto the unmade, unadopted part of Woodhall Road, and then gaining access to both golf clubs, both Carvley Golf Club and Woodhall Golf Club, doing a lot of damage, which these private clubs can ill afford to put right. And what we discussed was a couple of these barriers, and one also in the bottom of Carvley Woods that adjoins Ravenscliffe in Bradford, where Bob Buckingham identified a particular problem, again exacerbated by quad bikers only this last week when I met various people down there. But the issue of catching them remains, I'm afraid, fairly intractable. But if we can make it more and more difficult, or almost impossible, for them to gain access to Carvley Woods is an ancient woodland. We've also got them appearing on the what's known as the Bunny Run fields owned by Thornhill Estates in Carvley. We agreed to a temporary closure order on that, but you only have to have, you can have it for 6 months and it's open again. You have to go and renew it. And fencing along the Millennium Way needs looking at. And I just think we've got to find a way, and I'm sure I know it's the same in Pudseywood because they've had the same problems as us. We've got to do something about it. These people are creating massive anti-social behaviour issues. And not only that, but as Amanda said, I wouldn't recommend anybody trying to tackle them because they can be fairly unpleasant, to say the least. But there's a lot of damage to areas that people like and love and walk in, take the kids into, and we have to try and do something. So I say I'll mention the possible cost of this when we get onto the other stuff. But I feel personally very strongly about the disruption these quad bikers are causing, and also even more than that, the danger they create to pedestrians, kids, and also themselves. I mean, we had one in Farsley Town Street who very nearly got himself killed, and he could have been pulled out from under a vehicle. It wasn't the vehicle driver's fault, but it could have been ploughed into a load of pedestrians. And we just have to do something. And sending 2 people from East Leeds is just not doing the trick.
Bill, do you want to reply now? Because I think there's some more comments coming.
Just really quickly, Chair, if I could. And I know the council, we're strapped for cash, and particularly revenue is a real issue for us. But there is a clear correlation between the end of Parks Watch and the start of these quad bikes going daft again. You know, I accept that from an antisocial behaviour point of view, the majority of the problems are on tarmac, but the green spaces are getting left behind again. That's all I'd say.
So I've got Councillor Smith and Councillor David Blackburn. Do you want to just come back on that, Andrew?
Say, Phil, this meeting we had only a couple of weeks ago, it was like that scene from Jungle Book where the vultures are on the branches of trees, looking at each other and saying, "What are we going to do? Well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And I said in the end, "Well, for God's sake, will someone do something?" And I mean, it's serious stuff, this.
Yeah, Councillor Smith next.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Carter has alluded to, we do have very similar problems in the Pudsey ward. We've got Sykeswood, which is basically on the border with Farnley and Wortley as well, which it's torn up. We've got Shalbrook Lane going down into the valley where they're destroying the valley. We've got our parks where we're having to fence off, spend a lot of money fencing off our parks to protect our parks, and they're going on to roundabouts. Something needs to be done very drastically and very quickly before, you know, we're all effectively busting a gut to protect our environment, and yet these people are just destroying it in front of our eyes. So we've got some very, very angry residents down in Full Neck and the Valley in particular, where the quads are coming as a pincer movement. They're starting in Full Neck and going down Shalbrook Lane. They're coming across from Bradford into the Bradford side. And, you know, we're doing our best to deal with that, but we do need to do more and we do need help. So anything we can do is great. I mean, yeah, thank you.
So David Blackburn.
When you mention Park Watch, I've got, well, when my office is back to normal, there will be a photograph going up of Councillor Andrew Carter and myself with Park Watch out the front of this building. But those were the days when we could afford to have the number of people we need to deal with that job. I've got to say, I mean, there's areas in my ward where it's mostly housing land, actually, where we've had problems with it, where we've put his hands in his pockets and housing have put their hands in his pockets, and we've tried to stop it. But the thing is, you can't fence everywhere off. And I seem to remember quite a few years ago, we had we're in different times then, so it might not be possible. When we had a purge over a couple of weekends with police, and what we found is a lot of them that were doing things they shouldn't be doing were actually on nicked vehicles. And if we could get something together again to do that, I'm sure it would help, because it did do to some extent then.
Yes, Councillor Butler.
Yes, we touched on Parks Watch. It used to work well when well, I think it was all of Leeds West used to pay for it, but once it went that we didn't pay for it anymore, it went citywide, then it became a problem, as has been stated about people getting there. You probably get there after people have gone. I'm just wanting to know now what the situation is with Parks Watch. Do they still come and check all the parks out, or is it that they come if you ring them, in which case it'll depend where they are as to whether they get there in time? What is the situation with it? Because it used to be well worth having it when we had it, if you like, but now it seems to have gone down the drain somewhat, and I'm not getting at the people that do the work. It just seems that it's so that the area is too big for them to cover it all as well, certainly as well as they used to do, and well at all. I'm keen that if we have it, that it's worthwhile having, and at the moment it doesn't seem as if it is. And I'm not getting anybody here about that. I'm just asking the question.
The suggestion that David made, I think it's a good one. We've done a couple of things 2 cycles ago, haven't we? Subsidising a police operation. Why can't we subsidise a police and Parks Watch, what's left of it, operation? And actually, when we were talking to them, they were quite up for that. And having a blitz, and it's only a temporary fix, but it's better than nothing. And if we confiscate a few of these quad bikes while we're at it, it's something. I say I'll come back to the issue of the barriers when we get onto the finance, but I think if we could set you, Mike, the job of liaising with the other potential partners and financing 2 or 3 weeks of intensive work by the different agencies working together, like we've done with speeding and like we've done with 1 or 2 other things, that might bear some real fruit for us, I think.
Could I respond to that, Chair? The question around Parks Watch and just what Parks Watch do now is not one for Parks and Countryside, I'm afraid.
No. Because
Parks Watch was enveloped, it was seen as a security, part of a security service, and it's been enveloped by Leeds Watch now, I think. Save a Stronger Community, that's right. So I guess that question is for them. But what I do know is that the motorcycle mounted officers who not only enforced, but engaged, more importantly, some of the younger ones who would actually stop and listen. I think they played a really good role as far as that goes. It reminds me of that old joke about somebody spreading seeds in the middle of City Square, and somebody asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "It's to keep the lions away." He says, "There's no lions in City Square." He says, "Yeah, it works, doesn't it?" The thing is, I think it was seen when it was passed over to Safer Leeds. I think it was seen as not being a priority service, and that's why I actually make the correlation between the end of the motorcycle mounted Parks Watch and the start up of all these antisocial behaviour on quad bikes and so on. So I think there's probably still. I think it's fair to say, putting it in context, we actually started. When I say we, I mean the Parks and Countryside Service started the motorcycle mounted officers. The police followed suit. We've lost the motorcycle mounted officers now, but the police have still got a couple, I believe, because I know that we've worked with them in Calverley Woods and on that Bradford border. So it might be worthwhile speaking to, I don't know who the chief officer is, to be honest with you, but certainly Safer Stronger Leeds and having a word with them, because there might be something. But I do think it's the motorcycle mounted stuff that you perhaps need there, definitely, from an engagement point of view more than anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the parks officer there did allude to the fact that we've lost 5 of the rangers who were motorcycle riders. It's interesting it's gone to Safer Stronger Communities, because we shall badger them, I think, and see if they can provide some sort of security. But as aside from that, I have got an appointment with Chief Superintendent Damien Miller to see what he can do about deploying motorcycle riders, because they're based in East Leeds, to across and do, like we've said, do a blitz in our area, targeted response, and get all agencies out, because they are wreaking absolute mayhem, and it's only a question of time before there's another serious accident. Recently, I saw an A&E consultant say on television that the quad bikes are the most dangerous vehicle known to man. And we had one killed a number of years ago in Ravenscliff's Wood. And as Andrew Carter said, we had a very serious accident on Farsley Town Street, which could have been much more serious, as it turned out. But also it's the danger to, other people who use parks and fields and the woods as well. So I think it's really important that we do try to stem it, because it is really getting out of hand. Anybody got any more comments on that before we move on? Councillor Ann Blackburn.
Yes, mentioning that, I seem to think that, I can't remember exactly when it was now, probably about a year or so ago, I tend to think that we, meaning this committee, give some money to the police in our area to do with these motorcycle, so that they could employ either one or two people. And so I'm wondering what's happened with them. If you're saying they're over in East Leeds, well, what the hell have we paid them for? Pardon my French.
David Blackburn.
A question for our parks people. If you remember, you came out with me probably before lockdown, and we were getting motorcyclists coming up that path that weren't in our ownership, and onto back at Blue Hills there. And we were looking to try and find a way of stopping them going on, but we couldn't put it where we wanted to put it because it wasn't our land. Have we got any further with that? Because I've got to say we ain't got. I haven't been getting the same complaints as I got previously, but
I'm sorry, Councillor, but what path?
It's one Wortley Moor Road, up the back of where the chemical works used to be, which is now I think a waste place. Wortley Moor Road, onto land that we got coming up Wortley Moor Road, right? And you come onto land at back of Western Flats Park and back at Lazones there, right? Yeah, right. And we were getting motorcyclists coming up there and quad bikes coming up there, and we were looking at
going down the side of Cabbage Hill.
Yeah. I think yeah. I probably might want to explaining it that well. I know we were talking about sort of trying to block the access there. I've got to say, since lockdown, I've not had that many, complaints about it. But we were getting it really bad before lockdown, and I wondered if you moved it, been able to move any further forward on that. Anyway, you can tell me afterwards if you want.
Okay, if there are no more comments, then move on to the next item, which is item 10. Down to Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Next item is the finance report for the Outer West Community Committee, which can be found beginning on page 27 of the reports pack. So this report, as usual, provides the committee with an update on the budget positions for the funding pots, along with an update on the COVID-19 remaining budget also. Within this report, we've got two large grant funding applications for the 2021-22 balance of the current financial year for decision from the committee, which we'll go through in due course. So just starting off, referring to paragraph 16, asks the committee to note that since the previous meeting in November, there have been 3 projects passed by DDN. That's the Pudsey window alarms, the Tyersall Tots project, and Money Buddies additional sessions in Farsley Library. And since the last meeting, we've had no confirmation of any project cancellations to report back on currently.
Councillor Smith put the Money Buddies organisation on to me. They've been operating successfully in Pudsey. And I think I wrote to you about it, didn't I? So I very much support the fact that the committee agreed to funding it. But I would like to know what the uptake has been in financial advice and debt counselling since we got the thing going. It's only been going a couple of weeks, so certainly don't do it immediately. But I would like a report back to let us know what sort of uptake they're getting.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. That's fine. We'll be asking for a full monitoring report from Money Buddies because we've set this up as a separate project to the wider Money Buddies projects that's running in the area. So we'll be asking for full monitoring back from them in terms of attendance and some of the other targets that they highlighted. So then just moving on, paragraph 18 to 21. Ask the committee to note that the total wellbeing budget for Outer West for financial year 2021-22 is £139,614.28. And to date, the committee has allocated a total of £106,041.31 to projects and ring fences, leaving a balance of £35,407.51. Table 1 on page 29 provides the committee with a breakdown of this allocation also in terms of projects and ring fences. And this brings us on to the 2 large grant project applications that I mentioned for decision. Summary of these can be found starting on paragraph 23, which is on page 31, I believe. The first project is called Parking Buddies Signs, which is a commission project that the communities team would manage. It would cover potentially all 3 wards, Carbley and Farsley, Pudsey and Farnley and Wortley, and it would be to start immediately. The project description, the project proposes the purchase of further parking buddy road signs to be utilised by schools in Outer West Leeds area. 3 sets of signs were funded by the committee in 2019. 1 for each ward, and these have proved really popular and effective in reducing antisocial driving near school entrances. Each sign comes with a base that can be filled with water or sand for stability and reflective graphics for visibility from car drivers and pedestrians. Intended to provide additional safety for school children as they arrive and leave school premises, and also encourages drivers to slow down, keep the area clear and not idle their engines near school properties. I've obtained updated pricing for the new year from the supplier. So the price for 1 set of 6, which would cover 1 ward, is £1,107.45. 2 sets of 6 would be £2,205, and 3 sets of 6, if all 3 wards wanted to partake, would be £3,292.50. In terms of priorities, this would meet best city for communities and best city for children and young people.
Councillor Carlisle.
Thanks, Chair. We had quite a discussion over the last ones, didn't we? And I think probably various things have got in the way of working out exactly how successful they have been of all the turmoil we've had in recent years. But I know the ones that we funded for the ward, which were intended to be moved around, have spent most of the time at Pudsey Bolton Royd at Moorlands, just due to the fact that they're still very much needed in that location. So I think it's probable that we need at least 1 more for our ward to cover the other schools to be moved around at their satisfaction. The one difficulty we had, I think, was how they get moved around. And that's a real difficulty. I think, in fact, Farsley Springback may have bought some of their own. So that's something to maybe go back and see whether there are any schools that have gone in and got some. Because I know they raised the question with us, and in the end, I think they just funded them. But moving them around is a difficult one. And I think, as we've seen, we probably do need some support from somewhere to go and pick them up and be able to take them to another school, because the schools don't have the time or the resource to do that.
What's that? We spent long enough discussing we were going to end up having to move them around, who was going to collect them, move them. And then, of course, COVID came along and they just stayed where they were. And actually, I've been up, happened to have been up at Bolton Road a couple of times recently, and these signs are good. I mean, they are good, and people do take notice, and they do hit you in the face. So I would be more than happy for us to, I think we're going to have to watch the cash, but certainly we need another one. I think Springbank have got their own, so we'd have to check that, because they came on to us all saying, where's ours? When we decided we'd have the one set per ward. But it is the issue of moving them around, but I do think they're good.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's definitely an issue moving them around. I know we've moved ours a couple of times. It's also a big impact on the school and the school caretaking team to actually put them in and take them out each day. So it may be that, you know, we need to ask the schools in question whether they have the capacity to actually do that, because not all schools are able to, you know, physically lift them in and put them out each sort of time. So I mean, I'm definitely up for this. We definitely need them, but we just need to be cautious of where they're going, and that we're not putting another burden on an already burdened school. Thank you.
I think it's impractical to ask schools to do it. In fact, really, and certainly ward councillors can't do it. So, Councillor Forsyth, then Councillor Blackburn.
Yes, so in Farnham and Wortley, they've been between 3 schools. So they've gone to 3, and now they've gone back to, in fact, the first one. And I did have a word, although obviously it would be needing to sort of talk to them more often. But there was a feeling that they could share. They would be able to arrange it between them, certainly 3 of the schools in our ward, so that they would manage themselves, which would not mean our management. But I mean, it depends obviously on the individual schools, but they've certainly been, they were requested back again. And I think some schools might buy their own, yes.
Blackburn.
I've got to say, transporting them about's a bit of the thing, particularly when only 1 of 3 ward members in our ward's got a car. So Councillor Forsyth has got stuck with job of taking between schools. So if you ever got a situation where all 3 members didn't have a car, I don't know what you do.
Yeah, I mean, look, they are quite expensive, so we need to make a decision about whether we can, what we can afford, and Councillor Smith.
Sorry, Chair. I just think, you know, if we get another set of 6 per ward, then that gives us 12 in each ward. That's 3 times 4 rather than 2 times 6, which could actually work better.
A lot of heads nodding, and we're saying that's what we're going to do. Yep. Okay, great. Mike.
Sorry, just to clarify, so that was option 3, an additional set per ward. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Lovely. Okay, so the second application, which again would be for an immediate start, is from Money Buddies, who have put in an application to do some additional sessions at Swinnow Community Centre. The amount requested from Wellbeing is £1,239. They would provide £481 in match funding. This would be based in Pudsey Ward and would start next week, if approved.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I obviously asked them to put this application in, because Swinnow is definitely struggling at the moment, and Swinnow Community Centre is an ideal place to base something along these lines, trying to tie it in with other agencies at the same time, so they've got more of a community hub there rather than having to come up to Pudsey or anywhere else. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
That's David Blackburn.
We spend the money on the it's for children going to school. That's an activity.
I think that would probably be a creative accounting, but I suspect in the true sense of the word that it is around more general activities that were, but I can ask the question, but I suspect that.
Spend our money wise, with a bigger underspend to carry forward on the app funding than we have on general funding. It's worth asking the question.
Yeah, we'll ask the question. So Councillor David Blackburn, then Councillor Anne Blackburn.
In general, on money buddies, I think in the coming year, we're probably going to need more of this kind of help all over the place, and in some places where formerly we didn't need it before, because I think the rising fuel prices and the general economic situation is going to hit people who weren't it previously. And I mean, COVID's done that in a sort of way. It's hit people who didn't expect it. So I think what we've probably got to do when we get a budget for next year is think about where we need to do other things.
Councillor Anne Blackburn.
The people that's giving the advice are just trained volunteers. So as I said, the sessions seem to be quite expensive. I agree that yes, there is problems, particularly over Christmas all over the place. But if we're going to have 5 at Swinnow, you know, I think we've got to look at the fact that there will be other areas. I mean, in my ward, we've just started up again with our travelling mobile hub, because we don't have a hub. And I'm thinking it would be a good idea to have one on there. We do have one up at Farnley Community Centre. The other thing is as well, is because the volunteers that do it, you're up against the fact of when they're able to do it. And many times when they're able to do it is not if you're doing it in a building like a community centre. I found certainly, well, pre-COVID, that when they wanted to do it was not the best time really, because the community centre was doing other things that day, so they had to go around the back and all this. So you've got to bear all this in mind. I mean, on the hub, bus, I think we'd probably be in a better position there, really, because there won't be other people coming in like you have in the building, you know, the people coming in and that sort of thing. But it will be something we'll need more of. And as I said, the price is quite high. So while I have no problem with Swinnow having 5 at the moment, I think it's something we'll all need more of next year. So I'll just throw that out, bear in mind that we'll all be coming cap in hand, probably wanting more of this next year.
Yes, I think you're probably right, Anne. So going back to the Swinnow, oh, sorry, Councillor Carlisle.
I was only just going to comment briefly on that one because the Swinnow one, I think, similar to the Farsley one, is to take them over to the end of this financial year. So I think maybe now's the time for us then to have a more concerted conversation around a full Outer West approach for the next ones. Because it may be that if they run a morning in Farsley, they can do the afternoon in Pudsey, and we could end up with something that's really successful and work out where we're going. So maybe that's the conversation we should start.
To have that conversation in so that we can plan together.
But yeah, I think that's probably not a reason for Swinnow to stop, because I completely agree that that community will need the support now, and then we can look at what other communities we can help further.
Right, given everybody's comments, am I getting an agreement there?
Agree.
Thank you very much. Right, Mike, can move on.
Thank you, Chair. And just to very quickly come back, Councillor, on some of your comments there about the community bus that Money Buddies potentially could use. I think the issue around location is Money Buddies need a separate room with an internet and a phone line for confidentiality. But certainly I know that now they're up and running at the Hillside Centre in Farnley and Wortley. And we're exploring a lot of these libraries as well, the Farsley Library and the Swinnow Community Centre. That can feed into one conversation with them for next financial year about a one application that covers all the wards. And like Councillor Smith and others have said, try and see where they can achieve economies of scale to bring their costs down in delivering that. But I'll have those conversations with them.
So you're right there, but as far as we're concerned, the bus would be a better idea that going in different areas, it would generate, I think, more custom for them.
Yeah.
I've got no problem where it is at the moment, but your problem is that these people can only come during the day.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are out during the day.
Yeah.
So really, location wise, and the fact that the community centre is quite well used. I know in here some comments have been made, it hasn't always been well used. Well, I would disagree with that. But the fact is that if you're telling people to go around the back and in an entrance around the back, because other activities on in the main hall, I don't think that's very welcoming either. So I agree, it's something we've got to look at, but I'd like it, and as I said, I appreciate the volunteers, but I'd really like it if they could go out, you know, at night. Obviously people would be in there, because I think they get more people in that way.
Yeah, and I'll certainly feed that back into them and ask them to explore that as an option and see what they can do in terms of flexibility around locations. Sorry, Jeff. Yeah, okay. Okay, so moving on, we've got the YAF budget next, starting on page 32, which asks the committee to note the total available for spend by the committee in this financial year is £69,371.02. And so far the committee has approved a total of 34,981, leaving a balance of 35,489.30. And table 2 again gives a breakdown of those approved ring fences and projects. And we've got no outstanding YAF applications to come from the 2021-22 budget. So we'll move swiftly on then to small grants and skips. Table 3 on page 35 provides the committee with a breakdown of the small grants and skips budget, and asks the committee to note that from an original ring fence of £5,000, the committee has allocated £4,980.94, leaving a balance of £19.06. Yeah, I know.
Somebody's tried to
It was touch and go.
say to us, he said, don't go spend that nasty.
And then moving on to capital budget, table 4 on page 36, the committee is asked to note the total and more balances outlined in table 4. So with Carvely and Farsley, we've got £4,555.36, Farnley and Wortley, £8,291.26, and Pudsey, £10,392.38. With no outstanding capital applications to consider, Then very briefly, there's an update on the remaining COVID budgets that were set aside to respond to the pandemic. Table 5 on page 36. Basically, there's just one ward that has any funding remaining, which is Carvley and Farsley, who have £625 left available to spend towards COVID relief. Chair, so it's just to check at this point if there's any requests from Carvley and Farsley members to use that money at this point.
How quick has it to be allocated? Sorry. How quickly has it to be allocated? This is time limited, isn't it?
So this is different to the central government funding that we spent last year.
It's not time limited.
That pot had a deadline of last March, which was why we had to
got rid of,
which we spent up on. These were ring fenced at the start of, I believe, the 2020-21 financial year. So it would be ideal if we could allocate it by the end of the financial year.
Got long,
not got long. But it can be carried forward.
Can it be carried?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I will double check that, but I believe it could be carried forward that amount.
Check.
On the proviso that
lose it.
Yeah,
but we don't want to spend it in haste.
No, I'll double check that and come back to you within the next few days. But I think if it's carried forward, it would be preferred if we could then prioritise it in the early next financial year to get it allocated.
I'll come back shortly on other things, Mike.
Just quickly on this point, and then I've got one other I'll take us back to, if that's all right, that I was going to bring up. Am I right in thinking that this was the amount we ring fenced from our wellbeing fund? So I think, in fact, if it wasn't spent, it would just go back into our normal fund.
That's correct. So each ward allocated, I think it was 10,000 each, and then have been working through those gradually. Because we didn't know how long this pandemic was going to last. And then we had the injection of the separate budget from central government, which was more time pressured. So we prioritised that.
How it is. There was a central government funding, which was certainly to be spent within the financial year. I think we were encouraged by the centre to ring fence an amount of money. Now, being that it was at the behest, quite rightly, of the centre. What I don't want to find is the centre then says, well, you haven't spent all yours, so you've lost it. That's the point. So I think we need to find out that money is not going to be somehow clawed back and taken away from us.
I will double check this, but my understanding is because you ring fenced it from your wellbeing fund, much like other wellbeing projects, ideally they would run within a financial year, but in the instance where a project hasn't finished, it could fall over into the next year. Yeah.
Carvley and Farsley members can do a ring round and we can deal with it, can't we?
Blackburn.
I think that if I remember him rightly, this was we got told we had some extra money. And then what we found out is we want extra money, it was taken off of our well-being. So So it might be worth checking.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it is part of the original wellbeing budget. So I say we will check, but my understanding as well would be they would just return to pot, which would be the committee's funding.
Sorry, Chair, it was a more general comment on this report. I was looking back at the YAF funding that we've had, and obviously 2020 to 2021 and 21 to 22, we had a huge number of projects cancelled, which has left us with a bit of a backlog. What obviously that's left us with is a huge amount of opportunities that probably young people didn't have because we've missed out on those activities. Obviously that will be carried forward into the next years, but we were left with 69,000 last year, which we didn't spend this year, sorry, I should say. And that'll leave us with quite a big budget next year. What I was wondering of raising to the committee here is whether we look at a real concerted effort to try and backfill some of those opportunities people have missed, whether we take that quite sizable YAF funding from this one, have a real good work with other organisations and see whether we can really bring forward a much bigger host of activities this year going forward as part of a comeback following all of that that's obviously been missed. It's all the opportunities people have missed. However, I think we'll be struggling to use all that money if we just go as normal and wait for the applications to come in from bodies, we may have to put a marker down that we're expecting a lot more from, say, the youth service or from the other providers, and then we could end up having a really good year of youth activities to fill in really those opportunities that many of those young people have missed.
On that same point, it's actually, from Carving and Farsley's point of view, it's more important still, because if you look through where all the youth activities are predominantly, and I understand why, they're in Carving and Farnley ward and Pudsey ward, and there's very little in Carving and Farsley ward. So I would certainly agree with what's just been said. And I think time is of the essence, and we need to be saying now to the youth services, as Carving and Farsley members, we want you to come to us and give us an enhanced programme of activities for our ward, because we are falling further and further behind in terms of activities for young people. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it has been over this last couple of years. And the fact also we take into account deprivation in certain areas, which we quite rightly should. But it is time that this was looked at properly, and there will be money available next year. So we need to move.
I am conscious of time. I just want to make a quick comment before I bring in Councillor David Blackburn, Councillor Trish Smith and Councillor Anne Blackburn. Talking about youth activities, one of the things that concerns me greatly, and I see a lot of in community safety, is young people starting to be involved in violent crime, and it's not all of our wards. And it's not something that the youth service can actually work with, because they are deemed to be in the same category as police. It's a specialised group of people, and you know, the violence reduction unit do all kinds of activities, and I wonder if it isn't worth approaching them to see if we could spend some of the money with some of those specialised people who could come into our wards and work with these hard to reach, difficult kids that are now working in county lines, that are involved in knife crime. I wonder what you think to that. And after that, I'll bring in Councillor David Blackburn.
Okay. With the money that we've got left, I think what we've got to be careful of is that we realise that this is a one-off amount of money. If we got the same budget as we did last year, assuming we didn't top slice any of it, and you're talking about 14 grand per ward. That's all. And the thing is, and I've raised this when someone came up a while back, it is that we're going to have a lot more money than just that 14 grand per ward. And we've got to make sure it's realised that these have got to be one-off projects that are not going to be necessarily repeated in years to come, because we won't have money. And one of the things I think we've got to be fair, that we've got to be fair to young people as well, to say this is a one-off thing, and not try and fund something that we know damn well we ain't going to have enough money for that in future.
Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I was going to agree with you, Peter, and say, yes, we absolutely need to sort of future-proof. We need to have an eye on what capacity our usual partners have in order to raise anything extra with us, because I know I've asked for extra in Tyersall and we're struggling, so I've gone to a private provider. I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor David Blackburn that we can't raise people's expectations and then have them crashing down again. So, you know, we do need to do more one-off things rather than continuations of what we've done with this extra money. And I wonder whether it's worth maybe a subcommittee, maybe just a round robin email, but we each sort of take a responsibility to go and look what's available, what would suit our young people in our wards with all the various different needs that each has, and then bring it back and say, you know, I like the idea of this, you know, and it's going to cost that, and then, you know, put all that in the pot and see where we land then. Because what I would hate to do is start setting up clubs and and youth groups and things like that, that we aren't going to be able to continue to fund. And then, you know, the young people are dropped again.
Councillor Anne Blackburn.
Yes, well, I was just going to mention about youth services and my concern that they just seem to be understaffed. We have one bus that I know goes in all 3 wards at certain times, but I believe that just has the one driver. And so it's a case of, if you want a bus, which I asked about some extra provision and was stating, yes, give me a price for it, you know, I pay for something out of my MICE funds. And you're told, first of all, if you want something, and yes, in some areas it's difficult to do stuff in buildings because the buildings aren't available, etc. But they don't seem to have the staff there to do it anyway. With the minibus, it's a matter of having it after a session's already been done in the ward, which is fair enough. And then you're told, well, yes, but it can start on such and such a date because we can't do it before then because, you know, staff wise. And there definitely seems to be a problem with staffing. And I think we've just got to really ask why that is, because it can cause problems if you're in areas where, as I said, you don't have some buildings available perhaps where you want them. You know, we used to have a community centre some years ago up on the Gambles and that, but all our community centres are run by volunteers. So once you volunteers for whatever reason become ill or get old or whatever, or they're not there, then the building goes and it's flats now. So I just think we need to sort of bottom these out, because I've been told over the last year or so about, oh, well, we do that, but we bring another group in to help. Well, so be it. It just seems that, as I said, we don't have the youth workers there. I think we need to ask the questions, really.
Councillor Say.
I think we need to make sure that we've actually listened to what the young people want, and there's been various surveys done recently, which sort of would inform us quite a lot actually about sort of cooking and that sort of thing. Some of the things might be quite surprising, but I think it should be informed what the decision we're making by that.
Carlo.
To end that point off, because I'm conscious of time, Chair, as you are, I think there is definitely scope then in the discussions we've had to arrange something that is time limited exercise, whether or not it's some kind of thing that appears to be more of a festival that you know, something that happens over a set period of time over the summer that is just fixed. But there's probably discussions around that can be had. So I wonder whether myself and Councillor Forsyth as children's champions, yourself, Chair, and then a member from Pudsey probably to add in. Well, looking at you to nominate one of your colleagues who happens to not be here if you so wish, should join together and discuss it. Just having then that local idea, bringing in your ideas, Chair, of around those more specialist sessions, which I think are definitely needed, and then some other sessions to involve those who've missed out on the normal we'd have. So maybe that's a meeting we should arrange to discuss that, and we can get on with the rest of the agenda then.
I think that's a good idea. Is everybody happy with that? Yep. All right, we'll arrange that then. Right, so moving on, Mike, quickly.
Sure, yeah. Whatever you want.
Relating only to Carvey and Farsley Road, and it's up to Farnley and Wortley and Pudsey to sort their funding out. We agreed £2,500 a piece for Platinum Jubilee. That's progressed in Carvey and Farsley Ward, and I need really some confirmation that I sent an email to Mike. I got following Christmas lights success in Farsley, I got the Breeze organisation to through Mr. Tabor. Yes, that correct? Yes, it is. To get estimates for closing Farsley Town Street for a period of time over the weekend. We had a meeting between Farsley Business Forum and Farsley Festival, and the result was that I found out what it would cost, and I need to go back to them like now and confirm that we, out of our 2,500, will pay for the road closure itself. That's not to say we're running whatever's happening, it's to say we would pay for the road closure and the stewarding. And we've got a price from, or he has, Mr. Tabor, from Gough and Kelly, who did the road closures for Christmas, and that's, I think, £600 odd plus VAT. Additionally, the firework company are wanting a deposit of £500. We're yet to decide where the firework display will be, because we're trying to find a suitable place between Carvely and Farsley where anyone can see it, and it will be completely aerial. And on top of that, there is the beacon, which we've got to sponsor for renovating the beacon itself. We'll have to pay for a new pole, about 250 quid. We've also got specialists at the fireworks who will do the lighting of the beacon, which will not be the same day as the fireworks. Additional to that, Farsley Festival are running the festival with the Platinum Jubilee theme, and they've got the money. And we're going to encourage the street trade, the shops in Farsley Town Street, to do things out in the street while the street's closed. So really, I'm wanting an agreement from my colleagues to make sure that we can start paying these things before I have to pay them.
Councillor Carlisle, I mean, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, very happy with that. I'm aware of some of the discussions through Farsley Festival and the other discussions that are happening. Yeah, all very positive.
The church in Farsley is doing 3 separate things, which they're organising themselves, and that's great. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was this thing I started talking about earlier, which is these quad bike stoppers. And I'd like us to send whatever proportion of our capital is necessary, which is 4,000 and odd in total, and Mr. Buckingham will advise and get it underway as fast as we can. Yeah.
I just had one comment, which was on an additional location, I think, because I've been up, and I don't know whether you have, to see the wall on Sunnybank Lane, on the entrance to the Sunnybank Recreation Grounds, which I think is by off-road bikers rather than quad bikers, motorbikes rather than quad bikes. But they've knocked that down.
They have
at least twice, maybe 3 times, and residents or Bradford Council, who own the land, have come and repaired it. But I think if something's not done there, and I'm not quite sure what can be done to protect that wall, it will just keep getting knocked down. And if we're left with us not funding that, I'm concerned that Bradford Council, who own the land, will just come take the wall away and put something different up.
Bradford Council have already been contacted about that and have done nothing, and they won't do anything, in my view. They own the land. It's currently subject to a dispute between the residents and Bradford Council, which Leeds is involved with, because we're trying to turn it into a village green, and Bradford have delayed the process now for 2 years and still delaying it. But I'm more than happy, and I would suggest the only thing we can do there is, because it's a disappearing wall, is to look at metal fencing. If necessary, protecting the rest of the wall, making a job of pointing it, and we should include it with the 4,000.
Just to clarify, that the locations I noted were Woodhall Road, Carvely Woods, and then looking at Sunny.
Woodhall Road, Woodhall, between the 2 golf clubs.
Yeah.
And bounding our land, incidentally, council's land, where we've just planted a load of trees, well.
Yeah.
I think trees. But it's certainly a good thing. And I would dread to think put back a bed on there, destroy the whole. And Eleanor Drive, Carver Woods, which is looking and the fencing that runs up the side of the Millennium Way between Bradford and Leeds.
Councillor Carter, could I just ask, could I just ask, is Bob Buckingham, our public rights of way manager, is he aware of that, where we want that double barrier? Because, yeah, fine, I do know that he went on the site meeting with you. Fine.
In the last 2 weeks about it.
Fine, so it's just a case of me prompting Bob is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
he's waiting for
fine.
He's waiting.
No, that's fine.
Hopefully, for us to say we'll give him this money to get on with it.
Okay, no, smashing, lovely. Okay, thank you.
That's about them.
Nothing to do with Carvel and Farley. It's Sill and Capel. Right. I know Councillor Ram Blackburn asked you the question the other day, but I can't see it mentioned in here. We did ask for the monies for 2 SIDS some time ago. I don't see it shown on here.
Yeah, sorry. So the money for the 2 SIDS was approved at the last meeting and
Right.
has been allocated for.
Okay.
I believe Andrew Richardson is trying to either set up a meeting with yourself, or he has set up a meeting with you because he wants to schedule that work in. So that's been allocated.
Right. So okay. I know you did, but I couldn't see any mention of it here.
Mike.
Thank you, Chair. And just to come back to you, Councillor Carter, about the Jubilee funding, I think it'd be worth just having a quick call next week as well, just to go through the details. But definitely, with regards to each ward that's ring fence money of £2,500, we can manage those through the community committee as commissioned projects, much like we have done for things like Christmas lights. So yeah, we can work with like Breeze and allocate money to them and to the fireworks companies. And work with you, and the same goes for the other wards really. Whenever they've got plans as to how they want to spend that money, I'd be more than happy to have separate conversations and move that forward as well. Yeah, we can act quite quick on that.
That the council's been very slow with arrangements for the Platinum Jubilee, but the result will be that there won't be contractors around to do the necessary work because they're all being booked up. Which is why we took the steps we did as quickly as we did. And already, I'll just say to other ward colleagues, if you want anything, you might find it quite difficult, which is why I want to book this closure as quickly as I can.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, actually, that comes to the end of the finance report, so we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the 2022-23 ring fences and applications report. So this report presents to the committee applications that have already been received ahead of the upcoming financial year 2022-23 and that are able to commence at the start of the financial year, and also provides the committee with the list of projects that the committee in the past regularly has approved, with a list of recommendations to ring fence funds or not for the upcoming financial year. So first, if you could be referred to table 1 on page 40 of the pack. We've got 8 large grant applications to go through. Chair, are you happy for me just to run through them as quickly as I can, and then we'll review after each one? Yeah. Okay, so the first one is Carveley in Bloom, from Parks and Countryside, affecting Carveley and Farsley. Building upon the previous year's floral displays delivered within Carveley, the scheme will provide floral features, hanging baskets to enhance the village centre. There are 28 hanging pots which will be located on Victoria Street, Thornhill Street, Rushton Street, Carveley Park, and this will add to the value of the floral displays in Carveley and link into the In Bloom displays. Amount requested is £5,757.99.
It's quite an uplift from last year, and what I can't remember is exactly how much we got from last year's funding. Are you aware if any of those are additional?
Carving Park was taken out. We didn't know. If we'd have known, we'd have got sponsorship or tried to. But then the other baskets went up, and people said, "Where's the park?" And this year, particularly, being the Platinum Jubilee, we want the park to have the things back. That's why it's gone up.
Yeah, as long as there's additional there.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Next one is Farsley and Bloom. Again, Parks and Countryside. And this builds upon the previous floral display delivered within Farsley. The scheme will provide floral features to enhance the village, including hanging baskets and floral troughs on the roadside, and will be maintained and watered by Parks and Countryside. And the request is for £3,049.60.
They've not entered. Well, they don't exist anymore, Farsley and Bloom. I think they've not been in touch with Arium. I went across to Arium last week to suss out what the position was, and they've not entered the competition, which is a pity in my view. But we certainly need this, which is basically all the floral decorations that will get done, because the voluntary organisations never seem to work as well as it could have done. We put it that way. And we might need to have a look at how we organise that in the future. But this is all for the Parks Department to do.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Next one, New Farnley and Bloom. Again, Parks and Countryside. This is for the purchase of plants to the value of £1,000 from Parks and Countryside Nursery in order to continue Farnley and Bloom additional seasonal planting to the many planters situated in public areas around New Farnley. So that's £1,000 on the funding request.
Just a point. I've not discussed this with my work colleagues yet, but there might be an additional. We were going to discuss it, but Councillor Forsyth has been a bit busy. But one of the things I wanted to discuss with them, but I've got some ideas where maybe we might be having some at Wortley and Bloom as well. And I need to talk to my colleague over there who's been responsible for starting up the Friends of the Park. So just be warned.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Take that one as approved. Next one, Pudsey and Bloom. Building upon the previous year's floral displays within Pudsey, the scheme will provide floral features to enhance the village centre, including hanging pots, barrier troughs and long hay racks. This will add to the floral displays in Pudsey and link into the wider In Bloom displays. And again, maintained and watered by Parks and Countryside. And the request is for £5,151.79.
Very happy with that, Chair. Very happy to see them return after last year. And this will help our In Bloom team no end, who also aren't entering any competitions this year. They don't feel that that they're able to, given the amount of work that they need to catch up with. So
On that subject, it is, I have to say, Richard Gill and the staff at Arium are brilliant. But all of us are more and more becoming reliant, particularly on them watering, which means, with the exception of Farnley and Worthing, which is a smaller scheme, find the costs going up. And I think Yorkshire in Bloom, which is a competition we go in for, it's a pity if we don't, because it gets the community out doing a lot of work. Example being Victoria Park in Carvely. We are going to be sponsoring 2 of the flower beds, which is already agreed with the Parks Department. Now, how long we can go on doing that is a completely different matter. But we're doing it for this next year, and I hope for future years. But I would say that what's gone on in terms of support or the cost of support is making it very difficult for in bloom groups now, very difficult, particularly those of us in urban areas.
On the same subject of funding and affordability, most of these organisations used to get funding from Green Leeds, which I used to chair, which is now defunct. And those opportunities for them to go elsewhere have now gone. It's great we're not putting as much stuff into landfill, but the fact is we've lost all that money that we would have otherwise got.
Okay, so the next application is for an additional gardener resource from Parks and Countryside, covering Pudsey and Farnley and Wortley ward. The application seeks funding for the provision of an additional area resource staff to be based at Tyersall Park and New Farnley Park. The member of staff will work 41 hours a week for 6 months of the year. Duties will undertake grass cutting, pruning, delittering, emptying of bins, removing fly tipping, marking out sports pitches, inspection of play equipment, maintenance of park infrastructure, planting and sweeping paths. And the funding request is for £14,104. Thank you, Chair. And the next one, which is the last one from Parks and Countryside, is for Pudsey Park weekend littering. Affecting Pudsey Ward, this application seeks the provision of additional littering pickups at Pudsey Park during warm, sunny weekends covering the months of September to March for up to 10 weekends. The cost per weekend is £118.33, so a total of £1,183.30 for 10 weekends. If the additional resource is not fully required for the 10 weekends, then underuse funding can be returned or used against Pudsey Park. So the request is for £1,183.30.
I just wonder whether we ought to ask our colleagues in Parks and Countryside if they could do anything additional around the Jubilee weekend, because I'm sure the parks will be more used during that Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, with more events, more picnics, more, so it would be worth trying to get them to get that resource in now, so they've got time to book it in with their staff or contractors as applicable.
We already do hot spotting in certain parks, especially on the bank holidays, and well, it started on just bank holidays, but it's cascaded now to nearly every weekend in a selected set of parks. I don't see any reason any difficult for me to add that extra weekend in, so Parks and Countryside will pick that up. Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. The next one is from Building Futures Together. And the project is Rock Up to do a mock-up affecting Carveley and Farsley, Pudsey and Farnley and Wortley. Following on from the 2021 summer project programme, this project will build on relationships developed with the Outer West community, and based in a live business setting. The sessions introduce young people to the industry by taking part in various exercises, including plumbing, electrical and fabrication activities. The sessions provide support for employability amongst young people, especially for those who may be drawn into antisocial behaviour, crime, and those young people seeking employment after criminal justice. The programme intends to run in the school holidays from the facility in Pudsey on Tuesdays and Thursdays from April 2022 through to February 23, and will allow for 160 students to take part in total. The funding request is for £12,000. Last year's project came out of Wellbeing. The project from last year that was run by Building Futures Together came out of the Wellbeing Fund rather than YAF.
David Blackburn, then Councillor Blackburn.
Just a point. We got the full stuff sent through us by email. and I was having a read through this, and I've got to say the whole idea of the project seems wonderful to me. But if you go and get the additional information, it says on the exit strategy, how the project will continue after funding. It says, we are currently engaging with schools in Leeds Outer West, those being Pudsey Grammar, Pudsey Crawshaw, Co-op Academy at Priestthorpe, right? Not Farley Park, not the other school in our ward, high school in our ward, where a lot of our kids go to, that is it actually just over the boundary in Armley. And then to rub salt in the wound, it says, and with the community manager at New Wortley Community Association, Rebecca Holding, right? New Wortley Community Centre is on the Clyde Olphus in Armley ward. And basically, which is a priority ward. And I've got to say, my less well-off residents get it. It really gets up their nose that they get extra funding there and we don't. And I do think, I don't think that should have come in like that. Somebody should have said something and it should have been picked up. But to me, it just doesn't look like they're trying.
Yes, if I can just add to that, the fact that this is in Pudsey, so how do we, and well, Cavan isn't far away, but how do people from Farnley and Wortley get up to Pudsey? Are you expecting them presumably to make their own way there? Well, yes, older ones, but it does depend where they live, because how our transport setup is, even where we live, it's a case of the buses are not that frequent. We just have one bus that goes up to Pudsey, and in some parts of the world, they won't even have that. So it seems to be quite, in light of, you know, what else has been said, it seems to be based more or less just around Pudsey, but obviously they're saying all three wards just to try and get the amount of money. But I've got grave concerns about it. I want to make sure that if it's in Pudsey, everybody can get to it, and what they're doing there, what that, you know, some report back from it. If we haven't done it before, I don't think we have. But my main concern is I don't think it truly reaches out to the three wards. And of course, after that, what's been said about the high schools it takes in, Farnley and Wortley's been forgotten about again. So, you know, I don't see how we can support it as is down here.
Councillor Blackburn.
Right. We're at last meeting that year, aren't we? This municipal year. And normally, if you get something like this, what I'd want to do is I want to get the people in and just investigate if they are serious or not. I mean, it could be they made a mistake. I've got to say, if they're putting in for money, they shouldn't have made a mistake. What they've put down there, it might be they don't understand geography area, but again, that doesn't say a lot, really, does it, for somebody who's putting in for money? But I'd like to question them what they're doing, because it's quite honestly what they're doing is quite useful. But the thing, it's got to cover everywhere. And it can't be go down as it covers 3 wards when clearly none of my people are going to be involved.
Mr. Carlisle.
I can help slightly on this issue because I went to visit it. We did fund some test sessions last year. I don't know, did Pudsey Ward members go to visit as well? And it's, in fact, I found it quite an inspirational setting, and the young people that are there are having some real opportunity. What I saw there was a number of young people who may have struggled in the school environment to learn various things, may have struggled with just making friendships and such in various other areas. And they were there working with some of the people that happened to work for the parent company that were volunteering their time that they're normally out on a site somewhere doing work to help these kids through what were quite complicated electrician and plumbing projects that I couldn't have done, but they were really putting some focus in it. Now, speaking to them, and I know, I believe one of them is a former police officer, retired police officer, and so he came at it with that inspirational view of wanting to give these young people an opportunity who probably wouldn't get it through school. What I do know is they're based right in the middle of Pudsey, and probably I'd say, David, it's probably just their misunderstanding of the area, but also they happen to have that base in Pudsey, which is loaned to them by the organisation that's there. I do know they were exploring trying to do it in movable units that they could drop into an area, which might be something. So I'd say, in my view, it's an incredibly important and inspiring project. Maybe what they've put in isn't quite right for what we want for it. So suggest then we should get them in, talk about what they can do for the best for the three communities, see what we can work out. But it was an amazing project to see, actually, the confidence of the young people that were there, the way they were working to some quite complicated things, and building up that team building among it was excellent.
Councillor Smith, and sorry, Councillor Forsyth, then Councillor Smith.
I'm just following on. So I would wish to know how they invite pupils, which pupils, and I don't know what age they're. A general invite is no good, and I have to say that transport and paying for transport is a barrier that must be. That's why bringing it would be a much better sort of model, if you like, if that could be. So yes, if they come here, it does sound good. It's just the right sort of thing. It's got to be targeted, I think, really. You've got to.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I did go and visit this last year while they were running the taster sessions throughout the summer holidays, and it is inspirational. You're right. I mean, these are exactly the young people that we are trying to reach, and we do need to target. However, I agree that it's in a centre of Pudsey. It's not, well, it's a walk out of the centre, just along Robin Lane. So if the young people got a bus into the middle of Pudsey, they might still struggle to actually find the location. They did speak of getting big 40-foot containers and actually dropping them on a site for a period of time, which I think is a much better idea. I think what they've put here actually misrepresents what they were trying to do, from my understanding. So I think a conversation is needed before we approve this, and then we'll really get to the nitty-gritty of what they're prepared and are able to provide, and exactly where that will go and who it will reach.
Okay, so the problem we've got is that we're not going to be meeting now for a long time. So right.
Council, we can facilitate a meeting with the organisation. What we could do is put out an open invite to elected members, and then we'll also have access to the monitoring from the taster sessions that were previously funded. And then if it then gives you an opportunity to have that discussion with the providers and decide whether it's a project that you want to go ahead with.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that this scheme, and I support it, and I welcome it, because schools do little enough to encourage young people who are not going to get massive academic qualifications to get themselves into a position where they can probably get ultimately very well paid and get very skilled jobs. So no problem. However, I have two big problems. One is that it doesn't properly serve Farnley and Wortley Ward. Now, I agree with the Farnley and Wortley Ward members. And secondly, again, to go back to YAF funding, when we have a significant amount of YAF funding, I would be much happier if this was coming out of YAF, and I would look at giving it more money, particularly to address the transport issues that not just Farnley and Wortley have. I would like to know, I suspect that the vast majority of young people who benefit from this are from Pudsey Ward, and I have no problem with that at all. Welcome that. But I think to paint it as it is, as working for the three wards, needs some questioning. It needs questioning and it needs questioning urgently, because you know, if we need another meeting, Chair, we'll have to have another meeting. We know the civil service in the city don't decide when we need to meet. We do.
So are you proposing another meeting to discuss this item, Councillor Carter?
No, if we can do it as a one-off, fine. But I'm saying we shouldn't be constrained because there is no currently scheduled meeting. You know,
Or,
who runs the place?
well, yeah, I agree. Or we could, we could email round. You could do the work and get back to us with a proposal, giving our concerns to this organisation and the encouragement that has come from members, and then get back to us, and we could have a round up an email. I'll let you come in then, and then Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, just to say, Councillor, what we could, it is quite within your rights to call another meeting if you needed to call a meeting. However, what you could also do, if you would like to meet with the organisation, we can facilitate that, and then pending your approval as members, the decision can be made as a delegated decision, which negates the need for you to have to come back in a formal capacity. On answer to the YAF question, my understanding of the project is there is a referral targeted piece of work, which the one key element around YAF funding is that it has to be universally accessible to young people within the patch. So because it's that was how YAF was originally set up.
To go through every YAF application that's been across this city to see if it complies with what you've just said, because I'm damn sure it doesn't.
Forsyth.
I'm just thinking about the young people who would be invited to this. We can't guarantee that schools would necessarily want to engage with doing the work of trying to refer anybody in, but the youth services know the young people in the area. So actually they could be the ones that are able to target who might be invited. Obviously, it's not that many places.
Councillor Carwell.
The one point I'll make, coming back to Councillor Carter's comment just then, we do have the targeted youth provision that comes out of YAF, which is targeted young people that go to specific sessions that we organise, and they are recommended by the youth service. Now, I think we fund that out of YAF, and it goes specifically to those young people that would be targeted to. This, I think, would be something that we'd like to see targeted in that same way. Youth service and schools and the cluster recommend people to that. So I think it will be open access for those that we specifically think would benefit from the session. And I think we've got it later on, a targeted provision for YAF coming up. So I think something similar like that was what we were thinking.
I'm more than happy to check the guidance. As I say, that was how the original YAF guidance was set up. If that's been altered or there's leeway within that.
Well, I think it's necessary that we question them. It's all right doing it by email, but I think this question needs to be asked here. As Peter said, as Tricia said, it looked really good project. But we just got to make sure it covers all the suitable young people in the area that it needs to do. And as I say, from reading that, I wouldn't have picked you up if I hadn't read. You shouldn't have sent me all these papers, you know. If you hadn't sent these papers the other day, and that's all, I thought, what's this, you know? And the thing is, I think we just need to ask questions, and not in a nasty way, but in a constructive and proper way.
Right, that seems a really sensible suggestion. So can we take that on board? Everybody happy with that? Councillor Ram, you want to say something?
Yes, I'd like us to have a meeting, a face-to-face meeting. That's what we need to have, because quite clearly, from what's been said, it seems as if in these little sessions they've had that they've been doing good stuff. But if they're only going to be working with kids from Pudsey, because there's barriers there where others can't go, and also it doesn't seem as if they're working with our high schools. That, you know, we've got to make sure that it's right, and at the moment for our ward this isn't right. So yes, if we can have a meeting, I'd welcome that. Thank you.
Right, we'll leave that for you to set up then, Mike, to carry on.
That's fine. I'll pick up on that, and as Stuart says, we can arrange it.
First, to come in.
Can I just ask one question of two colleagues? When you visited, what was the gender balance of the young people that were there?
It was predominantly male, but I think that's what it is focused for, actually, that what there was male role models in an environment. I know that there's certainly a difficulty with that gender balance on it. There were, I think, some girls there. However, what it was really good for was some of those issues that exist among young men, which are, you know, a reticence to speak out about particular issues, a reticence to maybe have those conversations. I take on board that point,
yes,
but I think it was a really useful point for young boys, maybe in danger of getting involved in crime or involved in some kind of violence or having anger issues, to meet a number of very influential male role models. It was really useful. How you could expand it beyond there, I don't know. That's why I'm not sure about it, because I think that was a real value that it had, but I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
I asked exactly that question, if I'm honest, because when I went there, they were young gentlemen, and the trainers did sort of answer me that they had females through. They'd had the girls through as well. There just hadn't been any girls that day. So I think it's, you know, it was almost the clues in the question is rock up to do a mock up. So they literally just turned up, and whoever turned up they worked with. So I think that, you know, they were doing their best to reach out to everybody, but I think as Peter's sort of alluded to, I think it's more to catch the young men before they go off the rails, which is, you know, only a good thing. It's typically more that gender than the other gender that goes down the wrong path soonest. Thank you.
I think you're right there, Councillor Smith. Normally I would have an issue with that because I'm very keen that girls have equal opportunities to boys. But in this case, I think what you said, Councillor Carlisle, about boys being in danger of going down the wrong route, we do know from evidence that it's massively, something like 97% more chance of boys going into violent crime than girls. And I think it's really important that the boys are directed in the right way. That not just helps them, but also helps the girls as well.
I just say that I think it's important that we've asked the question. I think
I will feed all that back to them. No, absolutely. It's well, I've taken quite a few notes here, but I think you're right. For the amount of money they're asking, it's warrant to ask all the questions you want to ask. And how do you feel about trying to arrange a meeting actually on site in Pudsey at their place and put it on their turf so we can all see what's going on there as well? That might be good.
They can do a special session for us, can't they?
Oh, yeah.
Show you my plumbing skills.
Yeah. Lovely. Right. Okay. That's fine. I will pick that up. So the next application is from TCV Outdoors and Active Pudsey and Carvley. The project summary is to run environmental activity tasters in conjunction with socially prescribing sessions and support provided by Robin Lane Surgery and Hillfoot Surgery after discussion with Leeds staff at these sites. I did receive an updated application from the applicant last night, where they added in also Farnley and Wortley through the Hawthorne surgery. So I appreciate in your reports the ask is for £4,374.36. They have sent me through a revised request for £6,781.44. That's £6,781.44. And this would include 6 sessions in Carvley and Farsley based at the Methodist Church targeting men with a mix of woodland exploration, whittling, toasting, and cooking around a fire to encourage them to come together and talk and reduce social isolation. In Pudsey, the focus would be on gardening sessions to enable Pudsey Wellbeing Centre to relaunch a gardening group. And the sessions would encourage new members to join and create a plan and diary for the whole year. And then in Farnley and Wortley, it would be engaging with the Hawthorne Green Gym at Cobden Road allotments. And this group apparently has been existing since early 2019, but has really struggled through the pandemic. So this would be a limited effort to increase membership for the group and also plan for a bit more self-sufficiency for the year ahead. So apologies for the late change in funding amount, if you're happy to accept that information. The new request would be for 6,781.44 across all 3 wards now.
David Blackburn.
I'm going to be awkward again. This really, I think Trish, you'll be asking it as well. A lot of my constituents go to Gable surgery on Swinner, including myself. I noticed that's not included, and I would have thought it would have been. As I say, I'm not. I'm just saying it because I know it's there. That's all.
I might help you up there. Gables is part of the cluster with Guildford.
Oh, that's where they have the jabs at, yeah.
So I wasn't going to ask that.
I'll withdraw my question.
Sorry.
Are we happy with that one then? Right, okay. Marching on time. It's 4:15 now.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so that's the last of the large grant applications. Next, we have 7 YAF applications requested for the 2022-23 fund. So table 2 lists these on page 42. The first is from Pudsey Wellbeing Charity. This is the Pudsey Youth Cafe, requesting £2,560 within Pudsey Ward and would run for the full financial year. The cafe has been running since January 2017, opening its doors on Wednesday evenings from 6:30 till 8 for young people. The weekly sessions include a meal, group activities, and a number of workshops planned throughout the year, and it aims to create an active, safe space for young people in the locality. Thank you, Chair. Next application is from the 6th Wortley Brownies. The project is a pack holiday to Winmarleigh Hall. The request is for £1,050. The trip would take place in the second week in June, and the pack will be taking 25 girls aged 7 to 13 away for a weekend of adventurous activities to Winmarleigh Hall. The aim for the weekend is to challenge and team build in the countryside, and the funding is requested to cover the cost of the coach hire, so £1,050. Yeah, thank you, Chair. The next one is the 6th Wortley Guides. They're taking a trip to Dorset in July. The 6th Wortley Guide unit was 70 years old in 2020, and they'd originally planned the trip as a celebration. However, COVID put plans on hold. They'll be taking 24 guides and rangers aged 10 to 17 to Dorset and Brownsea Island, which is the home of camping for scouting and guiding. Funding again is requested to help part of the cost for the coach hire for the trip, and that would be £1,200. Thank you, Chair. Next application is from the Youth Service. This is the Farnley Youth Club. The request is for £3,000, which would be based in Farnley and Wortley Ward. The club would run throughout the full financial year to continue running the successful Friday evenings youth provision, which is enjoyed by more than 35 young people a week. The aim of the project is to provide a safe space for all young people to enjoy social and leisure activities that's stimulating, diverse and engaging for youth aged 11 to 17. This would be based at the Hillside Community Centre, and they would run 2 sessions each Friday, the first between 4 and 6 for intermediates, and then 6:30 to 8:30 for seniors. And the funding is requested to cover rent costs for the year, £3,000.
Councillor Forsyth.
Just wanted to come in very quickly. So there used to just be one session, but since COVID, and they've just expanded so much, and they know that the provision that they want for the younger ones is different from the older ones. So this is a real sort of really good that there are many more youngsters going. So it's more funding than we've been giving them before.
Thank you, Chair. The next one, again, Youth Service. This is for the Farnley Football Project, take place in Farnley and Wortley Ward between the end of April and the end of October of 2022. This would build on the success of previous year's football projects with the hope to begin again in April. It provides positive, healthy outdoor activity open to all young people aged 11 to 17. The aim is to challenge, engage and facilitate young people to make responsible decisions. It's also to ensure young people develop in a confident and responsible responsible members in the community and have fun on the way. And sessions would take place on Wednesday evenings, 5:15 to 6:45 on Farnley Rec with a qualified coach and youth worker.
Is everybody happy with that one? All right, agreed, moving on.
Next one is the Youth Service Mini Summer Sports Programme. The request is for £720. This would cover all 3 wards and would run between the end of April and the end of October. This would deliver 16 1.5-hour sports sessions on Hainsworth Park, Carveley Park, Swinnow Moor and Farnley Rec. And it would be 4 sessions a week for 4 weeks, commencing Wednesday, the 3rd of August. Each session can cater for up to 20 young people at any time, and there would be 2 sports on offer at every session, such as football and a field event like foam, javelin or frisbee target game, and the request is £720.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one on this. Have we ever had any monitoring back on it? Because I know I've watched some of the sessions on Swinnermore, not in any sort of funny way, but I just happened to have been at Swinner Community Centre while they've been going on. And there only ever seems to be 1, 2, 3 children there. They're not very engaged or enthused, and it's almost, what we're here for, what are we doing? So I'd like some monitoring if possible, just to see who are we reaching, what are the numbers, what is actually going on, because I've no doubt the youth service are turning up, but where is it advertised? How are they drawing the young people in and things like that? 'Cause from what I saw, it was a bit of a washout. So could we spend the money better?
So are you suggesting that we have a conversation with them before we allocate the funding, or allocate it and monitor it?
Yeah, allocate it and monitor it.
Okay. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, Mike.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yeah, I can certainly get the monitoring for you. I know we have that. Next one is the Youth Service Summer Holiday Targeted Provision, requesting £1,500. This covers all 3 wards, and The youth service team aims to work in partnership with the clusters to develop a targeted summer youth provision. The main objectives will be to enable some of the most hard to reach and vulnerable young people to access positive activities. And the project adopts a much more targeted approach to tackle some of the highlighted priorities of youth nuisance and improving support where there are additional health needs. This would fund a 4-week accredited canoeing and kayaking course at Yeadon Tarn, 2 outdoor challenge activities, which is 2 full days, and a trip to the Yorkshire Dales also. And the request is for 1,500.
John Blackburn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I see it's to work with clusters. Now, in Farnley and Wortley, they don't have a cluster now. It's part of the Armley cluster. And since then, I don't really hear much about them. I'm supposed to go, but I don't hear anything about when it is or whatever. I think they told me once and I couldn't go that particular day. And so I'm not really in touch with them. So I'd like them to get back in touch with me because I want to make sure that our young people are involved in this. And I'm not sure that, you know, because I'm not involved in it, I'm not sure that there will be. I want to know where they're getting these youngsters from. Because it sounds as if it's good, but you know, it's a lot of money, and I'm wanting to know how many people it can actually cater for, because there's 3 wards there. And as I said, one of the ward clusters actually includes Armley as well. So I want to make sure it's our kids that go rather than from the Armley cluster. So really, I want to know more about it.
Right, I'm going to ask members to ask all the questions, then officers come back at the end. So Councillor Forsyth and Councillor Carlisle.
Yes, Councillor Blackburn's quite right that we're now with Armley clusters, so it's basically just making sure that that this is to the I think it's called the early help, isn't it? Yes, the cluster is up and running, and so obviously just need to make sure it's ones who live in our ward, not in Armley.
I believe I've looked into this before because I was on the Pudsey cluster, but as well I'm the children's champion, and it turns out they run it across a number of wards. So kids from the Armley cluster will be invited, and they will make sure there's Farnley and Wortley children on that list. They may end up going with the Armley and Bramley children, and ours may end up going with some of the other kids that are around, because it runs as a separate project in each one. They just have to then be very careful about which children are going, because the clusters don't match with the obviously the areas that we've got, but they try and match our areas to the funding. But it may happen that the Farnley and Wortley kids go on the day with Armley ones, just because it suits the recommendation.
That seems to answer the question, Mike. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
We seem to be very short of feedback information from some of these groups as to, not blaming officers for that. I think it's probably the groups themselves that don't feed it back unless they're chased up. But it would be good to know, I think, how it does break down. I mean, it sounds very exciting, and it may well be extremely good. So I'm not saying I'm against it, because I'm not, but I do think we need to know, you know, just where they're coming from, because we might find that we're getting a better deal than we think, or we might find we're getting a much worse deal than we think. And we don't know. That's the bottom line.
We did insist pre-COVID, didn't we, that we wanted feedback from all organisations on how the things had gone generally, and that has fallen a bit by the wayside because of COVID. So, but I think perhaps we need to reinstate that.
Yeah, I think that's fair, a fair comment, and I think that the monitoring is, as you say, really important. I know this project ran last year, and they came through with an underspend actually of a couple £100, which we then re-engaged with the committee, and the decision was to reinvest that back into the project. And I think they arranged a few more day trips out to a skate park and a few more sports activities. I believe in total they engaged with about 40 or 50 different individuals. But I can certainly take a more considered look at that monitoring and engage with Stephen Harper at the youth service to get a breakdown as to, in terms of postcodes, where they came from and who engaged with which activities. That's fine. Are you wanting to defer on this one until I can find out a bit more information then, or?
Yeah, you're all happy with that? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So that's the end of all the applications for the next financial year. The next part of the report does just list some suggested ring fences for the financial year, as the committee did last year. And these are ring fences for projects that regularly come up throughout each financial year. So looking at wellbeing first on table 3, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 suggested ring fences there. There's the usual small grants and skips, which we came on nicely on budget this year. There's the community engagement, which we would use mainly for things like venues for future committee meetings if we get back out into community venues. The Leeds watch, I've confirmed that it's still 11 cameras for the area, so that price shouldn't be any different. And then the next 4 are the Leeds lights for the Christmas lights fund for later on in the year, which we tend to ring fence at the start of the financial year. And at the bottom is Pudsey Carnival Committee for 2,600. I believe an application's due soon from them as well. So it's just to open it up to the committee if there's any comments or any issues.
I think what we need as soon as we can, as soon as we know what actual figure we've got, is what we've got left, what we've got for next year's budget, and what we're committed to. I know I totted up on the YAFs from that were in my ward about £6,000 worth of stuff that we'd already agreed. And you know, if you do that a few times, you're not going to have a lot of money left. And I think what we have to do is we have to look at it in terms of that, because I think we just can't be taking things willy-nilly before May. We've got to look at that, have that set out of what we spent, what we're committed to, where it is, what it's delivered for. Is it across the board for everybody? Is it directed at one ward? And then make sure we're not going over the top.
Is if where the council is heavily involved, we can get prices quick. Because if we combine the council to the cost, and then it may not be as bad as it appears. It's when you get, I mean, I'm sorry, boys, to say anything about, it's not you, it's forestry. But as Councillor Amanda Carter and Councillor Kyle will know, we paid, not here, we paid out of our mice money for the Christmas trees. And the council charged us £575 each. And we need to know what these costs will be quick, because we can go elsewhere. The HAP's going elsewhere now, saying if we can't do it, we've got permission to go where we want, and we will. And if you're going to charge us 575 quid for putting a 17-foot Christmas tree, 3 17-foot Christmas trees at £575 a piece, there's something radically wrong somewhere. And it puts a huge burden on the volunteers who have to raise money. Now, understand, it may well be that's the council cost, it has to be. But we don't have to pay it, is the point I'm making. because it falls upon either elected members through Mike's money or volunteers through donations or sponsors. So I just worry that bit by bit, we're being squeezed out of doing the things our communities want to see. My goodness, our community, if the Christmas tree is shorter than it's normally been, we get accused of putting 3 lavatory brushes up. You know, but unless we know, but if we do know, we can plan. But people have to come to the party.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, Mike. I'd like to add on the week at the seaside at Swinner. I'm surprised Yvonne's not been in touch because she asked me to make that like an annual event, but I'm not sure you know what she's like, bless her. Well, I raised all the money externally last year. I think did we get £500 small grant or something? But if we could make that 1,000, because I don't think I'm going to be able to beg, borrow and steal like I did last year. So yeah, if we could sort of ideally put it in the pot, in the mix, that would be great. Thank you.
Facilitate that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to set up a ring fence for that, and then I'll speak to Yvonne, ask for an application as soon as possible and get some prices also. Yeah, Christmas trees and other things. Yeah, that's no problem. Sizes. Sorry, Chair. The last table is the same exercise, but for YAF projects for the next financial year. So we've got the Youth Summit 1,500 that we normally ring fence. And then there's just a couple of projects that tend to come up every year. Dazzle Dance, who normally put an application in, that's for the same amount as last year. Andy's youth project through the youth service. I know they are currently working at trying to get that project moving as quickly as possible. I know there's been issues this year, but I think certainly for next year that they've got the plans to do that. There's the Farsley Festival. I've spoken to them soon and I'm expecting an application shortly. And then the Outer West Activity Programme, which takes place at the West Leeds Activity Centre, and also the big Breeze events, the 3 Breeze events. I know Jason and Darren are certainly planning those for this year as well.
I'm not sure which way around you are, but Councillor Blackburn, then Councillor.
There we are, we're on now. The West Leeds Activity Centre. Whereabouts is this exactly? Is it? I think I know where it is, but
down by Benjamin Gott High School.
Yeah, so it's the same place as it. Yeah, that's where it was before. I didn't know if it moved or not. Well, again, they'll have to get people from our ward over there because it's out of our way to go there. And I'm sure we've said this when it's come up before, and it has come up previously. And no, but I'm just saying the fact of the venue there, we have mentioned previously when some of the councillors here before they were elected about that it's in Armley. It's the previous Benjamin Gott High School, and it is out of the way for most of our ward and probably the other 2 wards as well, I would have thought. So whilst I've got no problem with them doing some activities, I think we've got to make it a place where people can get to, unless they're going to take everybody there. And if they are, it won't be youth services that's doing it. Because as I said, when I've asked youth services, they tell me that they're short of staff. They can't take any of our people to any buildings anywhere else because they don't have the staff to do it or the vehicle to do it. So you know, I want to question, I'm not happy about saying we'll do that at that particular venue.
Councillor Smith and Councillor Carlisle.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one about, again, the West Leeds Activity Centre. I'd like to know exactly who they're reaching in all three of our wards. I've hammered home the point with them through emails previously, and they're very evasive as to who they're reaching within, certainly my ward. I obviously wasn't asking about anybody else's ward. So I'd like to know what we're getting for that money, because it just seems to be they gather bits of money from everybody. So who's getting the benefit of that money? The other thing is I'd like to see an approach made back to the music box, because that has gone down really, really well in our ward. And I don't know whether there's any scope to extend that to the other wards, make it a 3-ward thing. But it has genuinely gone down very, very well. So.
So are you saying that you don't want to ring fence this, or do you want to?
I'd like to ask questions first.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Before we start.
I'm thinking that it's a while since I've looked at sort of one of the forms that was filled in, and what we're talking about here is wanting some monitoring. That's what we've not got back. Is that a standard form that they fill in? But there's no space there for how that can be monitored on the form. What I'm saying is, should they be filling that in when they actually apply for, should there be some provision for how they're going to feed back how what the output is?
In terms of like at the point of application?
Yes, that they know there's going to be some monitoring that goes on.
Yes.
Shouldn't that happen at the, when they're applying for it?
That's a fair point. We'll have a look at that, because I don't believe the application form addresses monitoring at that point. Sorry, but we do send a full monitoring report towards the end of the project that they have to complete. And if it's a full annual project, we tend to ask for a mid-year report as well, so we can take a look at progress. With regards to the Outer West activity programme at the West Leeds Activity Centre, I believe in the past that transport has been included in the project. But also your points on participation are fair. And I think just that the point is that the ring fences don't necessarily mean they're getting the money. It means that the committee have set the money aside if you then receive the application and like the look of it. But by all means, if you want to defer on that one, and I can ask some upfront questions in advance, just get some more information from them about their catchment, that's no problem.
As we're having a meeting to do with another application, could we ask these people to come here as well? Because I'm assuming that it's the our youth workers that do this. If it isn't, then they'll be able to tell me that's not the case. But if it is, as I've said, we don't have the youth workers, certainly at the moment, at least youth services tell me they don't, to be able to pick people up and take them places, because I've just asked the question now because I want them to cover a couple of more areas in my ward, and I'm willing to put the money up. And they say, well, it isn't the money, Council Blackburn, we don't have the people. So, I think there's more questions to be asked. So couldn't we have them here when we have the other people here, and then we can ask the questions?
We're going to meet in Pudsey on site and the other one. Yeah. So are we now saying that we want to meet here? Councillor.
I'm just remembering, Chair, that I think we've had these people at the last. I remember being in one of the committee rooms 1 to 4, and we spoke to West Leeds Activity Centre. The reason this is different is it's because it's at the activity centre where they have staff on site to run the climbing wall and everything. And they do provide a bus for all the young people that go there, because they're coming for the day at the activity centre. There's climbing, there's all kinds of other go-karting and various other. Now, what I can't remember is what the outcome was of the meeting when we saw him. Must have been 2 years ago now, or maybe more. But maybe we could find the notes of that and see what we agreed that time, because it might have the same questions in, I think, to be honest.
We can ring fence it. We don't have to allocate it. So we can ring fence it and then come back and decide when we've got some more information. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying there's questions there that I'd like to ask them. So I think I'd like a meeting with them somehow or other, somewhere, before this money is allocated to them.
Right, okay. So we're going to meet on site for the other application. Are you happy to meet by Zoom for this one?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, can we
Yes,
facilitate
Chair,
that?
yes.
Well, yeah,
You
two.
Zoom again.
Don't know. Lost me. Right, okay. So we'll set that up, video link.
Can I just clarify, would you rather leave that one as deferred until we've had that call? Just ring fence it for now and.
They don't have to, yeah.
Okay, lovely. Well, that's everything from the ring fences and applications report.
Next item, which is the update, and it's back to you again, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, you'll be sick of hearing my voice soon, won't you? I'll keep this one as brief as possible. So the update report, as you know, brings attention to the committee a summary of work from a variety of services and departments affecting Outer West. This particular update report was quite a lengthy one because we had contributions from Cleaner Neighbourhoods team, Gully Cleansing, a subgroup update, community safety from the West Yorkshire Police, public health, HAP, the housing team, employment and skills, CCTV, the Outer West hubs, the community centres at Swinnow and Farnley, social media report, and also an entrance from the community committee support team. So I know it was agreed that the committee would just take the majority of the report as read, and I would just highlight a couple of things that I just wanted to mention. First, very briefly, is two entrants to the update, the community safety from the West Yorkshire Police and the employment and skills. They're only received twice a year. So at this meeting, and then I believe the September meeting. So it's just to emphasize that the information in there doesn't come around at every meeting. The other thing I just wanted to mention briefly was the youth activities online consultation that's currently taking place. This is being run by the community committee support team. And the aim is to consult with as many young people in Outer West as we possibly can. So the information on this is paragraph 167. In summary, what we've done is created a series of online posters to help promote the survey, which have been really well engaged with on Facebook. The link has also gone to the youth service to share with the number of groups that they run. It's also gone to school cluster contacts for distribution across the schools in the area. I know elected members have been really active in publicising it, so thank you very much for doing that. That's much appreciated. I've also sent it out to all of the YAF funded projects that are running this year for them to engage with their users. And also, following a useful suggestion from councillors last year, the local district scout and guide groups in the area have been engaged with as well through the assistance of the district chair, district commissioner and the group leaders. Myself and David Harling have attended youth activities such as the mini breeze events in the summer to engage with young people face to face. And we did this just to make sure we're taking responses across the whole year rather than at just one specific time, which could influence answers. And more recently, physical posters have gone to the community hubs and libraries that have got interactive QR codes on them, which makes it as easy as possible for young people to scan it on their phone and get straight to the survey. And then most recently, the West Leeds Dispatch, spoken to them, and they've released a news story promoting it on their mailing list and website. So basically, we're doing as much as we can. The survey is open until the end of March. So we'll keep pushing it until that point. So first of all, it's to take a chance to say thank you to everybody that's been involved. The link is on paragraph 171 in here. So if you've got other networks that you could share it with, or anything else you can think of, we welcome any more ideas. And the intention is to bring this as a report to the next committee meeting with the results summarised for the committee also. And then just the last thing I just quickly wanted to mention, which I know we've touched upon already, is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The communities team, again, we've been promoting a lot of the wider initiatives on Facebook, such as the Big Lunch, the Green Canopy, the Jubilee Fund, and the Jubilee Beacons. This has all been sent out to partners, local groups, community groups, and on social media as well. I've spoken to the hubs manager for Outer West, and he's confirmed that Leeds Libraries have been successful in obtaining some funding, which is through the Libraries Connected Arts Council initiative. So they're setting up a working group to discuss how that's rolled out across the different areas, and I've asked to be updated on that. And then I also know that the communities team are also bringing all this information together in one report. So when I have it, I'll circulate that to members as well. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, each ward has got its £2,500 that it's ring fenced. So just, we're here to have those discussions with you as soon as you're ready to know what you want to do with that money. And we can help support that also. That's everything from me.
Carl.
Just very briefly on the consultation survey. So that's really good. And it's obviously the alternative to the youth summit that doesn't really happen. Sometimes in this area, we've had to be a bit proactive, shall we say, in making sure we get responses from geographic locations, a fair balance of genders, and to get a good split of ages. So I wonder whether if there's any information now on just the breakdowns of the responses you could share across the wards and across maybe ages and gender, that would be really useful, so that we know if there's, when we're thinking of places to target, whether we need to target more people in Farnley and Wortley, or whether it's in Carbley and Farsley, or whatever, because there's normally a bit of a discrepancy that we try and then even out in the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Carl. So I know that our senior management team are going to take a look at the current situation in terms of responses. Within the survey, we do request postcode data and male or female data if they're happy to disclose that to us. So we should get an indication of gender breakdown, location across the wards, and we also ask what school they go to as well. So there's a few different ways we can. Age as well, yeah, we ask for age if they're happy to share that with us. So there's a few different ways we can have a look at the kind of the metrics behind who's responded, and as you say, if there's certain areas where we're maybe lacking, we could try and focus on that.
Comments, Anne, Glenn, David.
I think it'll be same.
Yeah, I'm wanting to ask the question as to why we seem to have a couple of community centres putting some spiel in here, yet not all of them. And I've got no problem with whoever it is that's asked them to do this, but we need to make sure that we're asking all of them. You've got one in our ward and we have 3, and they're all run by volunteers. And, none of them's council buildings. Well, no, sorry, one of them's council buildings, but all 3 of them are run by volunteers, and they're all doing stuff. So why is there just one? Oh, sorry, there isn't. There's a Swindon one as well. But as I said, we have 3 community centres, not just one.
At the top of page 64, paragraph 113. If you read that, it looks like somebody's put Snowdon's into Outer West when it's in Inner West. But we think actually it's a misprint. We think that he's on about Gamble Close because we were after some handrails putting on some set there, so it might be that. But I just thought I'd mention that because it looks like we're covering Inner West as well.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. I'll take a look at that. And yeah, it might just be that it's a misprint, but if not, I'll go back to the contributor and just make sure it doesn't happen again. And Councillor Blackburn, yeah, you're correct. So the initiative to include information from community centres, it came from myself. I thought it'd be a good idea to start promoting the work that they're doing. Previously, we've not had any information from them, and I was just keen to start, giving them some publicity. I'm very conscious there is more community centres out there. So I'm more than happy to start making contact with them and see if they would like to start contributing to this as well. Because at the end of the day, it's to benefit the community centres, and the more the merrier. There's more that can go in there. It's just to get the ball rolling, really, working with those two that I've personally been involved with a few funding grants recently. So I'm happy to work with you if there's other ones that you would want me to touch base with.
Okay, everybody happy with that? Can we move on to the last item? Times and dates of next meeting. It seems a long way away, doesn't it? June, summer.
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual report that comes from the City Solicitor. Members are asked to note that we have tried to follow the pattern of previous years. So this committee has decided that it would meet on a Monday and a Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and we've tried to cover that in the schedule for the meetings. And the proposal is for Wednesday, the 8th of June, 2022 at 1 p.m, Monday, the 5th of September at 1 p.m, Monday, the 7th of November at 1 p.m, and Wednesday, the 15th of February at 1 p.m. So that would just follow the pattern that you've had over the sort of like the past 5 or 6 years.
Everybody happy? Yep. Okay. Plan Blackburn.
Where, Chair?
Right. Yes. Now then, that's the question, isn't it? Because I think we're very keen to have it continue to be videoed, but we're also very keen that we have it back in our communities. So there's a sum of money set aside, £1,000. Is that set aside to try to implement some technology, Mike?
No, the short answer is no. In summary, that would be to basically venue hire, things like that. It wouldn't be to implement any technology. I think that would be far beyond the remit of that budget.
Can we explore the possibility of the technology being sent, in our communities, and what would the cost be?
Thanks, Chair. It has been flagged up, not just here, but other committees. But at the moment, we're struggling to source a sort of mobile option for being able to provide it out in the community. We certainly don't have a system within the council as it stands at the moment.
Right, because we can facilitate it. So if we can do hybrid meetings from Merrion House, so I don't understand why we can't do it from one of our community centres, even if it's a council building.
I think it's to do with the technology that's been set up, particularly within the meeting rooms, and there's certain facilities that have been identified for certain meeting rooms. But I don't know what there is within. I mean, we can certainly have a look at what's whether there's any of the larger meeting rooms in the hubs potentially that maybe have conferencing facilities. But it's the conferencing facility element that.
There's Buddy Civic Hall. There's Farnley Hall. I mean, they must have facilities for this sort. I mean, somewhat undermines the purpose of a community committee that can't meet in its own community. And, all right, we had some people down here 2 meetings ago about a particular issue. But and over COVID, of course, it's not been possible. But when we met elsewhere within the community, we used to get people coming and speaking from the audience. Well, we're not anymore. Well, is there any? My Green colleagues would surely agree with me. Why should we be dragging people all over the city to when we just want to find a couple of locations in our own ward where this facility can be provided?
I mean, if I could just say, the fact is, it's proved people don't come. If you want them to come, you've got to at least make the effort. And as has been said, Family Hall, Pudsey, which we used to use Pudsey Town Hall a lot, there must be at least those 2 places. Because, I mean, what are we about? We meet 4 times a year. Are we just going to, yeah, we talk between ourselves and we do a lot of work here, but I think we ought to try and at least include the communities.
Could I respond? Just around the question of Family Hall. We have fairly up-to-date technology at Family Hall, and we're certainly capable of doing Zoom meetings and conference calls, but I'm pretty sure we don't have the video facility. But I'll ask the question. I'm sure Stuart, having been asked the question before, is up to speed on this, but I can certainly ask the question about Family Hall.
Then Trish.
I know your app meetings, Council, I talk looking at Councillor Carter and Councillor Bottom. The next one you're having one of the centres in Pudsey, aren't you? Down Crimble, somewhere down there. I know because I overheard you when I came in, when you were having a meeting, and you're having some kind of virtual thing there when you have that one. So I understand. So I can't see why we can't do that. And let's put it this way: I, as in my capacity as chair at NFLA, introduced things like that before we had lockdown, because obviously that covers parts of Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, Western Isles, and Orkney and Shetland, and we haven't got the money now to travel about like we did. So we were doing that before we had virtual meetings. So I'm sure it's possible.
I think we need to question the person in charge of technology very closely. So I'm going to shut up. This is the disadvantage of having your partner on the same committee as you will appreciate.
Oh, I do appreciate it. The echo here as well.
So I don't know. I suggest that we have a special meeting to discuss this and question the head of technology about this, because I just get the feeling that just being stonewalled and they don't want to do it. Well, we want it doing, and the people we represent want to see us in their community. What do you think?
I was just wondering, Chair, whether this would be a good item for Chair's Forum, as it's doesn't just impact this particular committee, but actually all 10 community committees across the city. Because as a service, we're keen to try and open it up as much as possible to the community. The issue that we're finding is that the facilities which are large enough to host a meeting like this with access to the community, the number of officers and councillors that attend, there's a mismatch. So it may well be something that actually, if we flagged it through Chair's Forum, through the exec member, that we could maybe prompt some prioritisation of how IT are rolling out that sort of remote digitisation programme that they're doing.
A bit as though somebody somewhere, not you gentlemen, let me say, says, oh, never mind them. We're not training about all over meetings. Get them in the civic hall and that's the end of it. Well, sorry, not good enough. Simply isn't good enough, because we're undermining the whole purpose of having community area committees that we should meet in the areas. And it's one of these things with COVID where you get the feeling that somebody somewhere in this building has thought, there are opportunities from COVID too. One of them is to get that shower of councillors down at the civic, down at the civic hall, and let's keep them there. Well, that is not the purpose, is it? So,
No, that's a good idea to try and do that. Councillors. Councillor Lambert and then Councillor Trish Smith.
Now, I think we've got to push this because, as has been stated, a different group, I accept, a smaller group, but if HAP can do it at one of the centres, like the Crimbles, etc., why can't we? I just don't really see. Okay, you can tell me it's IT and all this, you know, and try and baffle me with science because I don't know that much about IT. But I can assure you I won't be baffled by it, because to me, if we need to do it, and I think we do, we need to get on with it. And if people are telling us we can't, we want to know why we can't and how we can do it. It's got to be, you know, we've just got to argue the point, not accept them to just shove us off in a little corner somewhere, which many a time I know with the council in different departments they do try and do it, because I've argued it and won before now, and I'll definitely be out there with you if we take them on, because I think we have to.
Thanks, Chair. How much have we just spent to upgrade some of our community hubs? Have we not thought about putting video facilities in any of those? Why have we got Pudgy Civic Hall with no video facilities? Why have we got Farnley Hall with no video facilities? Surely these are the basics. You know, if we genuinely want to reduce carbon footprints around this city, then we need to stop people travelling unnecessarily around this city. While we're spending the money, let's spend it right. You know, let's not waste it or go back and constantly be retrofitting whatever it is, be it houses or be it IT or be it whatever. But, you know, let's spend it once and spend it right.
Right, so what do you want to do? Do you want to hold them in here, or shall we take it to Chairs Forum? Councillor Blackburn.
I think we need to get them in here first of all, because at Chairs Forum, I don't know what the other chairs feel, and some of them might be perfectly happy with it as it is. We're saying here that we're not, so I think we need to get them in here.
Councillor Carlisle.
Chair, if your forum's ahead of our next meeting or is going to happen quite soon, I'd suggest we see what the answer comes out there, because I'm sure some of the other community committees will be having exactly the same conversations as we are, thinking about their areas, and I'm sure it'll be a topic that we'll have agreement on. I know we may be further out geographically, shall I say, than some, but there are others that will be facing exactly the same as us, with many fewer community buildings.
Don't know when the next meeting is. Do you know when the next meeting is?
They are usually quarterly, like your meetings, and we've recently had one. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't progress down both lines. I mean, this is a conversation that I actually had with my head of service this afternoon prior to coming here, around the different committees. So if you decide to have your meetings out in the community, it's not video linked. Equally, those ones that here have the benefit of video link, but it's harder for communities. And there is that disparity. So we are aware as officers that this is an issue, and we would like to try and find a resolution to that that's fair and equitable to all the committees.
I suggest that we kick it off, and then it can be reported to whenever the chairs meeting is. It can be reported that we've kicked it off and we feel strongly about it and we want it, and then it's out there. And if others don't or aren't willing to fight it as much as we are, you know, the fact is that we put our cards on the table, and that's what we have to do. We've got to say, we want this, we're not going to be mucked about, and what are you going to do about it? And then it's up to the other people, if they want it, to be with us and say the same. Because, you know, that's how you win things. If somebody puts it out there, and then it's up to other people, then if they want it, as I said, to put their cards on the table as well. I don't think we've got to be mealy-mouthed about this. Let us get out there, let them come in, let us have a meeting with them, and then that can be reported back to when you have the chairs meeting.
I'm not really best one to say this, but I mean, this committee, 2/3 of it used to be a borough on its own, didn't it? Out to south used to be Morley. I don't know what the other ward. I think some of the ward between that and Rothwell were in Morley Borough, and Rothwell had its own council. So the thing is, a lot of outward areas in times gone by had their own councils. So really, we should be doing something so that those communities can have their meetings. One of the great problems with this city is it's too big, and that's what we set up the area committees, the community committees. Was so it got it down to a more manageable level. So we need to do something. But I mean, that's a point I think we should make is, you know, in years gone by, a lot of the areas that we cover were their own boroughs.
Right, so we want to have a meeting then before, because we'll raise it at Chair's Forum that David and I sit on, but we want to have a meeting with a senior technology officer. Yeah. Well, we'll have that gentleman in then to speak to us about why we can't have what we want. Exactly. So do you want to see them face to face? Right.
Just a closing remark from me though is 24 years ago when I got elected, I got put on the IT committee, not because I know about IT, but basically nobody wanted to go on it, so I got stuck on it. And I went to this meeting, which was in the old 6 and 7 room, and this officer came to us and told us that within 6 months, you'd be able to do all this online. Well, 2 years ago, when we first started having to do it online, it didn't work, you know. So I think they've had enough time to sort it out.
I think you're absolutely right, David. So we'll have the face to face. Where do you want to see them? Do you want to see them in the community or do you want to see them here? Yeah, fine. Can you arrange that, Mike? Right, so that draws the meeting to a close. Thank you all very much, officers and members, and thank you to the members of the public who've been watching and bearing with us for 3 and a bit hours.